Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of our podcast, Terrestrial Tales. Leon.
Good morning. Today we have Brian McCulloch. So, professional athlete, family man, businessman, and we're excited to have you here. Really want to hear your story. Been waiting for this one for a long time, bro.
Yeah.
So really happy that you're here. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, guys. I'm really excited to be here. I'm noticing a theme, though, in all of the podcasts. You're always introing everyone as like, oh, and family man. You're always lingering on the family man thing.
We seem to have a lot of family, like wholesome, good people.
I was
going to
say,
podcast.
like, you know, that's really encouraging. It's really encouraging. You're bringing it all out.
It paints the picture because when you're a family man, it's different. Like, so if you're a professional cyclist and a family man, it's like, well, how are you balancing that? And we want to get into that today because that's tricky, right? How do you how do you get there? I mean, if you're just a single person and you're just, doing your thing, that's different than if you've got, responsibilities and mouths to feed and, people to be there for. And then you're trying to balance all that in. And that life story is what we want to share with people because it's like you can do a lot of things and balance your family, life, work. It's not just, just you by yourself. So
100%. Yeah, the layers are, well, I mean, that's part of the aging, right? And getting that maturity, being able to have those layers and manage all those things. I always think of it like, as a coach, I always think of it like it's that old circus act, right? Like there's like 9 plates spinning and everyone's spinning the plates, right? And it sounds really awesome until one plate wobbles. Well, what happens when one plate wobbles? If that one plate takes out all 9 plates, we got a problem, right? And so when you think about that, whether we're going to talk about fitness or we're going to talk about health and nutrition through Snack Bar, or we're going to talk about, just relationships with people that we love and care about in our lives, right? Like school, business, any of that stuff, those are all plates that people are trying to balance, right? And I always think that finding that balance is super important. It's always, that's really the challenge. Like that's a challenge of every day.
Well, and you're right too. Like one plate stops spinning, the rest of them can kind of go out of whack too and crash. And then the whole balance will grind to a halt and you got to restart everything, and that's harder than just one plate.
Well, think of it this way, right? Like how many people do you know that were like, man, this guy lost a bunch of weight and he was working really hard and he was doing really good and maybe he did a big event and it crescendoed and then all of a sudden it's just like, oh yeah, I put on 20 pounds and all that went away, right? And so what we always work on in our business is, with any of the athletes we work on is really trying to help them maintain that. And really for as a metaphor, the idea is like to help people when one plate wobbles, the trick is how do you keep them all going and then balance that one again. And that one that usually I would rather the training wobble for our athletes. I would rather the training wobble because I can support you. Man, I got you. Whatever it takes, I got you. Right? We can adapt and overcome. But when you start seeing relationships wobble or business wobble or this, that, the other, right? And that's the real challenge, like being on a pro-cyclist thing, is that can be so all-consuming and that you're in search of all these marginal gains and you're working really, really hard. And so you have that unifocus. And what happens is you don't realize is that all those plates are already gone, they're broken, and they're on the floor. But you think, hey, I'm winning bike races. And it's like, but you have nothing.
You have nothing.
Right? And there's no lack of stories out in the community and in the professional sport community, certainly in cycling, but definitely you can look at Olympic sport or anything where it's like people are so driven and they're doing so well. And then all of a sudden it's like their life is in shambles. And it's just, to me, that's just such a tragedy. And so the privilege is being able to work with people that are hyper motivated, super disciplined, a lot of really intrinsic motivation, which I think is something that's fun to talk about, is the difference between intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. But working on that and helping people see that, like, hey, maintaining all of that takes a lot of discipline. It takes, but also a lot of balance and grace, because sometimes you have to be like, man, I'm not I need a break.
Well, and life hits you, and in the randomest time it hits you, and that's when the plates typically start to fall. If you're a college student, you get big seasons of tests where you've got weeks of hard tests. All of a sudden, training falls, or if it's not training like you're saying, and you're focusing so much on training, a lot of other issues. It might be because of other issues, or it might just be that you're neglecting other things that are important. So, like you said, keeping that balance is really important. But I wanted to just bring it back real quick because you talked about coaching. So like you're coaching, like what is exactly that you do?
That's a great question, because we're asking ourselves that right now in this COVID-19 era, but it's like, what is coaching, right? So it's real interesting to kind of think about, and maybe before we go down what we conceptualize it as, but the idea is, as a cycling coach, we get the opportunity to help people build their fitness.
Who's we?
My-
So just before we go, I just wanted to your company's called Big Wheel Coaching. So Big Wheel Coaching is you and your wife.
Yes, my wife Joy, and she
Okay.
started the company, so she's actually the big wheel. So it's actually,
So is that where the name came from, or how did because I've always wanted to know, because I love, I didn't grow up with big wheels, but when I came to the States and I saw them, I'm like, this is the coolest thing. But I was bigger and I could never fit in it. So I was like, I always wanted to ride it, but I could never get in it because by the time I came here, I was older. So, but how'd you get Big Wheel Coaching? Just a little bit about that before we go down that road of what you guys do. Tell us about the company.
well, I know this is a family podcast, but I know
Feel
it's a
free to
family.
speak your mind. Yeah.
Well, this isn't really speaking my mind. It's just telling you guys some hard truth. So my wife was a professional cyclist, and still is to some degree, but she was a professional mountain bike racer before we met, before we started dating. And so she grew up with her father is a pastor, and they've been, it's just been churches a part of their life their whole time growing up, right? And so in Seventh-day Adventism, like there's no earrings or dancing or tattoos and stuff like that. Whereas I grew up Catholic, and it's like, hey man, you just apologize for all that stuff. It's like, oops, right? So anyway, long story short, I know this is going to be on YouTube and all, and so my wife might be kind of embarrassed, but she won a bro race. She got $60. She went down to the tattoo parlor and said, hey, what can I, she had a playing card that was a big wheel, and the guy was like, yeah, I can do that.
Oh, that's cool. That's a good story.
And he put it on one of her butt cheeks, and so
That's a great
Nice.
story.
so forevermore she was the big wheel, right?
Yeah.
And so just because it's like, before we started dating, she would come on the local bike rides at that time, and she'd be wearing a white kit. And one day we were riding the white kit. We were riding, and it was a little rainy, and so the white kit gets a little see-through, and so you could see the big wheel. And so from that day forward, she was the big wheel, right? So it's always like big wheel, big wheel, big wheel. And so then when she wanted to, at the time she was teaching PE. And that's really the story behind everything, is that she was teaching PE at Redlands Adventist Academy. And she was just seeing all of her friends and people that she grew up with come in, they'd put on 20 pounds. And so at that point we were engaged, and she was like, Brian, I want to do PE for adults. I want to help people. I want to help people lose that weight. I want to help people engage, find that love for themselves and invest that in their health so that they can help others along the way. And so that was how Big Wheel Coaching was born. And she ended up saying, okay, I'm going to start my own business. Right. Nice. And so anyway, so that's why it was Big Wheel Coaching, and not you go to all the other coaching companies, because it's like, Endurance Forever Coaching or like Go Fast Coaching. And I was like, Big Wheel Coaching, here's like streamers and fun.
But it's good to be different sometimes, and that it's really special. I like your story behind it. I really like the way it sounds too. Big Wheel Coaching. It's got a nice ring to it. So,
It's catchy. It's good. I love it.
Absolutely.
I'm glad you shared that. So tell her, thank you, Joy. I'm glad that you shared that. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you, Joy. Exactly.
It's a very big part of you. Like when I see you, the big wheel is part of you. It's like, I wanted to know where that came from. So that's cool. And the PE for adults, I love how the way you articulate is really good, because you make it clear. Like when you set the 9 plates in the air, immediately my brain is painting the picture of the circus guy, right? So he's just got the sticks and he's got the plates, and it's
that's what that is. I've never
Have you not been to the Barnum and Bailey circus, bro?
No. I mean, I'm sorry. It's just, I never saw it.
Dude, I got a picture in my head of the guy with the mustache and the thing, and he's got the sticks going. He's got all the plates. Oh, yeah. It's a big...
Too far?
Yeah. I completely understood your analogy. So I guess that speaks to your ability to explain, but I did not actually know what the plates. I just knew balancing and plates, okay, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. There was a stick, and the guy would spin the plates.
Yeah.
And then he would get
picture.
another one started, and he would spin the plates, and then he would spin the plates, and he would spin the plates. See, there we go. Right? There might even be 9 of them in that photo.
Yeah.
I just had a mental picture of red and white plates spinning.
No, but this is real. It's hard. You watch them, they're wobbling. They're real plates. It's not like magic. It's like the guy's really doing it.
That's cool. Well, the analogy stands very well, though.
So now
balancing your life.
There you go.
That's perfect.
Oh, and those plates are wobbly like life, because things wobble. Because life is not going to spin perfectly. It just wobbles. Yeah. Stuff happens.
Well, to bring it back to the coaching then. So now that we kind of have a better picture of you as, your company, Big Wheel Coaching, now talk about that coaching part.
Well, so the coaching thing is interesting, because we always think of coaching as one part art, one part science, right? And so if you were to compare cycling coaching to weightlifting, for example, weightlifting is what they call programming, right? And programming is, you already know the moves, Evan. So it's just like, hey, go bench press this 3 times 8. 4 times 12, whatever you're going to do, right? Whether we're lifting for strength or whatever we're doing. So that's programming, right? So that's a component of what we do, is we write training plans that are individualized for people so they have, okay, hey, today you're going to do these intervals that are specific to your goals. Okay. So that's one component, is the programming. But the component and why it's called, in actuality, why it's called Big Wheel Coaching is because the art component is really important. Okay, so how we ride our bicycles is equally important to how powerfully we ride our bicycles. Okay, so there's a lot of nuance and talent and skill that it takes to ride these bicycles fast, to ride them safely, to be able to ride them day after day, because you can very easily develop overuse injuries. You can develop all sorts of issues when you're just cycling. And so what makes it really important from the coaching process is to listen to the athlete, figure out what they're doing, and now filter that through, well, what do they want to achieve? So what are the, everybody's got a finite amount of time to dedicate, right? That's the whole plates concept, right? Is we only have X number of time, but we have infinite goals, right? So, okay, I want to do this event, right? And I want to do, I want to be in the top 5 in my age group. Right. And so you go, okay, well, that's a big goal. Well, okay, you need this much time. Well, hey, dude, I got 2 new kids and that's not realistic. I don't have that much time. So we start chopping it up and trying to figure it out. And so the thing that's fun to me is to start looking at, because most of our athletes are adult athletes. So when you look at someone, you can come in and say, I'll give you an example. The gentleman I coach, Fred Archambault, who's he played collegiate hockey. Ice hockey, right? Because he's Canadian.
Hardcore sport.
Right. And so, you think about that. It's super hardcore, but he's also very, very coordinated.
Right.
Okay. His balance is incredible. Right. Now, compare and contrast that to someone who was, say, 40 pounds heavy and then started cycling because they had weight loss. Okay. So now
Completely different.
Not only completely different, it's more like that person, they still visualize themselves bigger. And they don't realize that now it's like as if you were driving a Suburban. Every day for 20 years, you're driving a Suburban. And then you get in a Porsche.
Yeah.
You can't drive. You don't have to drive the same. Your braking points are different. The way you accelerate is different. When you get fuel is different. Everything is different, right? And so, for that person, we have to treat them very different. And I don't mean different in a bad way. I mean like you have to help them move along and recognize like, man, you're a sports car now.
And that's the art part.
Right.
Not just slamming a circular block through a square hole with programming. Now you have to say, okay, well, this person's very different. This person just lost 20 pounds. So they're going to be requiring different element of programming then, in a sense, right?
Well, and skill set training. Okay, so the idea would be like you two could both have the same goal. We could say, okay, we're going to do a goal. We're going to do an event, and we both want to finish in the top 3 of our age group. Well, that's the same goal, right, for each of you. I mean, it's the same event because, say, it's a 100-mile Grand Fondo, say like the Mammoth Grand Fondo or something like that, okay? So now you've got the same goal, but how you guys are going to get there is going to be different because the resources you have are different, the skill sets you have are different, right? And the time that you have to dedicate to it is different. One of you might be using a trainer primarily, one of you might be training at night, one of you might be training during the day. So we might say, hey, the group skill set has to be emphasized, or we might say, hey, no, the endurance side has to be emphasized, right? So it's very different. So all those layers, we have to try and build those layers with a finite period of time. So sometimes you look at it and you go, okay, I want to build 10 things, but I really only have time for 7. Pick your best 7.
How is that communication working with you as a coach? Like, what's that process? Are they typing, calling you, emailing? Like, how are they reporting back? How are you tracking that? What happens?
We have an incredible partnership with a company called Training Peaks, and Training Peaks it's a cloud-based software program. And so what happens is for you as the athlete, you have a GPS computer or some way to track and gain data. Okay. So you capture all that data during your training event. Okay. And then that gets uploaded to the cloud. Okay. To the site, Training Peaks. And then what happens is then I can because your athlete account is connected to my coaching account. And then what happens is now I get to view that and I get to look through all those data channels. I can look through heart rate, I can look through power, I can look through cadence, speed, elevation, temperature. All those things are really important. Okay. And then there's a place for commentary. And so you can say, hey, really hot ride today, super slow. right? And so that accounts for what I'm going to look for as a coach. I'm going to say, oh, well, there's the high heart rate because
Right.
it's hot. You're trying to deal with thermoregulation. Okay, then you look at it and you go, okay, well, why is the speed low? Oh, because it's hot, right? So your effort is high, your speed is low. And so it starts to tell a story. But one thing we like to think about when we talk about art and science is that you can capture all that data, and that's very scientific, and we can measure things, okay? But until you write, it was bloody hot today, I'm smoked, I don't understand what's going on. So I want you to think it's like a black and white picture. Athlete commentary is color, and all of a sudden you get this vibrant, rich color where people start being descriptive, and you start teaching them about self-awareness and helping them to be like, man, it was really hot today, but I rode well. And then all of a sudden at, mile 60, my right foot started really, really bothering me. Right. And so those little things become very, very useful because you might not see that in the data channels. Okay. So now we have to bring that up and go, okay, well, what's happening at mile 60? Well, if you're training for a 100-mile event, we still got 40% left, guys.
Yeah.
And depending on the course, and see, this is the interesting thing about cycling is that it's not just, well, okay, you're 60 miles in, so you're more than halfway. Some of these courses, the majority of the climbing and the majority of the difficulty is later in the day. So you're doing harder tasks, more fatigued, right? So in my mind, that's really like, it's preparing people accurately for what they're going to see in real life conditions. Okay, so we can boil everything down to physiology, fine. But more than physiology, we need to be able to help you in real world scenarios. You know what I mean?
I know exactly. I get it now. So it's kind of like you're not just looking at scores on paper, right? You're looking at a deeper or a bigger picture of that. But then just to talk a little bit about the science part, you seem pretty well versed in it. So where did you acquire this knowledge, the scientific knowledge, so to say?
Oh, well, there's a lot of study involved. So a lot of coaches are like exercise physiologists, or probably not that many of them actually are. There are exercise physiologists, and they're probably working in a collegiate setting or a scholarly setting of some kind. Some of them are, but for Joy and I, she obviously has an exercise phys degree from her. Sorry, I'm blanking here, but through her schooling from college, right? I didn't have that. I went to school for business. And so as a pro cyclist, it was like, okay, we learned basically by making all the mistakes in the book. So,
okay. Yeah.
It's like you have this dichotomy of real world experience versus like, oh, we have the science back of it. So I've had to do all the back work of all this education. So I just read a lot. And, I burned out a lot of highlighters. Let's put it that way.
It's a good partnership you have then. If you have you have the business background, because that kind of reminds me of Snack Bar.
Right.
I have a lot of the business background.
Right.
And then my partner, Anka, she's got that, registered dietitian, food science background, and that came together with Snack Bar, which is how we came together, which was an amazing experience, and that was cool. We'll get to that in a bit. But I'd really like to hear, can you share a little bit about where'd you grow up? What were you like as a young kid? Because you're, I want to get into a little bit of the professional cycling and the professional athlete part, because I really want the listeners to hear that, because it's difficult. Like, it's really hard. And even, I'm a cyclist too, and that's my love, that's my passion. And it's a little different because I was thinking about it earlier today, and I was thinking about like Colin's a soccer player, different sports that you could have, and you could go have a pickup game of basketball on the weekends and maybe not have done much during the week, and you get some minutes and you can play and you have a good time. But as a cyclist, like, you can't do that. Like, you as a cyclist can't just go jump into the weekend ride and think you're just going to ride with a bunch of people, because you're going to get dropped. Like you'll be riding by yourself. Like, with the first little rise or the first stoplight or something, it's different than other sports. Like, you just can't go get a pickup game like you can. It's different. So I want to know, like I've always wanted to know, what were you like as a kid? Like, how'd you grow up? Like, what got you to want to become a professional athlete and go through that sacrifice, that pain, to get there? Because this is hard.
And how did cycling come into play? Exactly.
Yes. Well, cycling came into play because I was racing motorcycles professionally, like motocross and supercross, and we wanted to cross train. So back at that time, that was like, you got to think I graduated high school in 2000, and so that was about the time Lance stuff was going on. But we didn't know what was going on, right? But what we saw, so this is kind of how that
Where is
ripple
this?
effect.
Is this out here in this? Where?
Yeah, so I grew up in Northern California, in Fremont. It's a little town between San Jose and Oakland. And at the time, I mean, it was a really populated area. We went to a nice high school. It was like 5,000 kids. So, I mean, you're just a little speck of nobody in there. You know what I mean? And I wasn't particularly popular or anything like that. I was just like, I wrestled a little bit. My parents got divorced at some point, and that's kind of a theme in my life where me and my dad's married 4 times. So that was a little like, that's something I've had to grapple with for a lot because I was really worried about. That's why I got married so late, to be honest with you guys. Like I was like afraid, like I don't want to make a mistake. I want to do this once, And so eventually I just realized like I'm an idiot if I let Joy leave my life. Like she's this amazing person. I have to have her in my life, and I had to like make this really brave.
That's good.
We just have to make a really brave step. And I mean, I know it sounds, oh, great job, buddy. You're brave. I don't mean it like that. I just mean it like you want to honor that commitment and really see it through appropriately. And it helped me receive a greater appreciation for what it takes to be a man in life, and just be like, okay, hey, we're going to be the man of the house. This is what's going on. It's not ruling with an iron fist. It's being able to like say you're sorry.
Back to the family stuff at the beginning. That's for me. It's so important too. I have had parents growing up, crazy relationships. Like they were nuts. And I was an only child, so I was alone a lot and dealing with, parents that were pretty nutty. And so when I grew up, I'm like, I don't want that in my life. I want stability in a relationship, and I want, in my not just in a marriage or in life or partners, but in all of it. Like, and I really value family. It's a big thing to me because I was alone a lot. So for me, I have friends and people that are like brothers and sisters now. Over all the years, it's such an important part to me. That's why I stress family a lot. It means a lot. It means more than anything else to me. At the end of the day, It's fun to be fast on the bike. It's fun to make money. It's fun to go travel. But family is key. Sure. Relationships when you travel the world, and we touch people's lives, and like we have family all over the world now. So that you can rely on, that you could call and count on, and they're there for you. So it's huge. I 100% agree. And just thinking how lucky you are to have Joy, and you said you wouldn't want to let her leave, but she's a professional athlete, professional cyclist, so you both love the same thing. Yeah. And cycling's broad, so it's not like, we both love doing the same thing. It's like, well, that could get boring, but cycling's not boring. I mean, there's so many different facets to it, and different ways to do it. You could race round and round really fast. You can go climb mountains. You can go for camps. You can go touring for months. You could do tons of stuff with cycling. It's really interesting. So then, how'd you get into motorcycles?
My dad, when he was my age, he had a race car. And so actually recently, we now have a 2-year-old son, my son Seamus. And so my wife just recently found a photo of me sitting in my dad's race car.
What kind of race car was it?
It was a Porsche. My dad did Volkswagens and Porsches. And I can't remember. Maybe it was a 944. You guys would probably know more than I do. But he was...
was the engine in the back or the front?
The engine was in the... I think it was mid-engine. It was the one that it wasn't the front engine one. I know it wasn't that one.
So
it was the mid engine, and it wasn't a 911 body style. It was that more compact, tiny 914. That's it. That's it, Leon. Yeah. Dude. Thank you. Brother.
I love it.
Thank you.
I love it.
Yeah, that was a 914.
Can we start on cars?
No, that was a deal, right? And that was a big deal. So he was, very fast car.
Yeah.
He had some track records in his area, and it was just. My dad was into racing. He loved to go fast, and so at some point, we got on, like, one of my buddies had a mini bike or something like that. And I don't know if you guys know anything about mini bikes, but it's like
crotch rocket kind of thing.
No. This is like you put a lawnmower engine in it, and it has these like springs. Like it's just like not performance at all. I mean, the tires are terrible. I mean, it's just like. It's awful, right? Awful. But like you get on it and it's like your sense of freedom is like been accelerated. Okay, so when you think of bicycles, we always think about how it's like your first mode of freedom. So for my son Seamus, he gets to choose where he wants to go. It's his adventure every time. Even if he's riding his bicycle in the house or in the cul-de-sac, it's his adventure and he gets to go on it, right? Yep. And he gets to be, successful or fail. He's in charge.
That's a beautiful definition of bicycle right there.
That's what it is.
It's your adventure. I never thought of it like that, but I just wanted to stop right there for a second and just acknowledge that is in itself just really interesting to think about. Is it's your first freedom. It's like, because you don't have to put fuel in it. You don't need money to make it go aside from parts, but it's just freedom right there. You get on a bike, you can go somewhere. It's your adventure. You control it. That's really cool.
Think of it like concentric circles. Okay, so like your world when you're very young is this big,
Yeah.
right? And then it gets a little bit bigger. It gets a little bit bigger. It gets a little bit bigger. And then you get a bicycle and you can ride all over town. And so like when Leon and I were growing up, like we just ride everywhere. We just rode it's what we did, right? I mean, it's just, it was what you did. It was our way of transportation. All of a sudden you could have friends and you could go see friends that were 3 miles away because you could ride your bike there. Okay, so think about it for you boys. When you've gotten your driver's license, it's like all of a sudden there's like this brave new world for you to go experience. You know what I mean? And then maybe you get into travel and you have, you know, a boat or an airplane, or you know what I mean? Not you own it, but you get to get on one, right? And so you start thinking about how that grows the world to you. And so cycling is a way for you to experience the entire world in a different way. Yep. Okay, so for my dad, he just wanted to go fast, and I love that, and I like to go fast.
It's in the blood, then.
I just like to go fast, man. Yeah. And so, anyway, long story short, we got this. You know, a motorcycle is an extension of that, but like you said, you have to have fuel, and there's like costs and stuff, and all these things. So we ended up like, I wasn't that great of a student. I wouldn't say I was a bad student in elementary school, but I was on the verge of just going down probably a not good path, right? Because it was like, my parents had just got a divorce. You know, there was a lot of strife there. They were dealing with their own challenges, and there was not a lot of parenting going on. And my dad was like, dude, you need to get your stuff together. And I was like, you know, I'm a little kid. Like, I just want to go lowest common denominator and just be a little punk, you know? Yeah. And my dad was like, okay, kid, you want to go fast? That's fine. You get your grades to, you know, I want 4 A's and 2 B's. And then you can get them. I'll buy you a motorcycle. Nice. And it was like a real motorcycle.
And this was kindergarten, or when was this?
This was probably, I could tell you right now. It was a 1993 CR8 Honda CR80. And it was like, bro, when I tell you I came home, I got those grades. You tell me I did all the extra chores. Yeah. I did everything. And so I guess looking back at it now, it was really exciting because my dad, maybe he didn't know it at that time, but he helped me understand delayed gratification. And now I know as a father how important delayed gratification is, right? And even for us as athletes, right? Like, because that delayed gratification means so meaningful when you achieve something. And so my dad was like, okay, buddy, you're going to work for this period of time. You're going to make these sacrifices and you're going to get this thing. And I remember coming home and that it was like, I mean, you couldn't have made a movie out of it. It was amazing. Like, I came home and the garage door, like, just, and there was the trailer. We didn't even have a trailer. My dad went out and bought a trailer, and there was this brand new CR80. Wow. And so, I mean, you think about that. Like, now my dad had to go get his day. He had to take off of work to go pick it up. You know, he's been working on this for a while. Like, I didn't go to the motorcycle shop and pick it out. I mean, we'd go to the motorcycle shop, and I would just be like, oh, my God, I just want to sit on that thing. It's amazing. Like, that's how it was, right? And so I just came home and there was this motorcycle and it was like all this came together, and just in that one moment my life changed because it was like, oh wow, if I work hard at something, I can achieve something cool. And that's what I want to do. And so now, and it just kept going and going and going. And so there's, you know, like any journey for all of us, right? Like, there's left turns and there's right turns and there's like, oh, I just crashed here, or like, oh, someone put a roadblock here, or I made my own roadblock and I didn't know it, you know, all that stuff. But eventually, you know, ended up racing professional motorcycles. That was really fun.
Actually race, like getting paid, like on a circuit? Like
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I want to be fair and I want to paint the most honest picture I can here. But like in motorcycle racing, they have what they call 2-digit riders and 3-digit riders. Okay. And so 2-digit riders was anybody less than 100. You earned those numbers. Okay. So like you got points and you earned them. I was a 3-digit guy. Okay. So for those who are like listening that are like moto heads, like I did Supercross and I barely made the night show. Okay.
Supercross is what the jumps and
like
in a stadium kind of thing.
Like let's put it this way. I've been in a stadium with 50,000 people cheering, and I can assure you they were not cheering for me. I can assure you.
But you're still racing.
I was there. Yeah, I was there. I was like almost last.
Well, what's that experience like? And then also with the digits, I initially thought 3 digits was like you make over $1,000, and 2 digits you make hundreds of dollars.
No.
What do the digits mean?
It's the number on your motorcycle.
Okay.
So it's the number, you have a number plate. So that was a thing. So it became an identity, right? So anything over, and so at that time, things were changing in motorcycles because, you know, the economy was good in the early 90s and 2000s, things were good. People were like, it was just motorcycling was exploding. The motorcycles were getting so much better. The suspension was getting better. The technology was getting better. We were jumping a lot higher. Like everything was just intense. It was super intense. And it was great. And so we were, I got introduced to some guys really early on that did, it was called the Gary Semix Motocross School. And those guys helped me learn the craft of racing. And so it was just little things like when you'd hold your handlebars, you had to turn your hand out so to keep your elbow up, because that's how you would keep as an extension. Like you would think you have forks on the front of your motorcycle for suspension. Well, you would want to extend that into your arm. And that was simply a matter of rotating your hands just out a little bit. So your elbow was out instead of in, because then it was like doing a pull up, you know what I mean? Right. And so little things, they taught me all these things, and they gave me an appreciation for fundamentals. And that's where I appreciated my dad so much now. Is looking back, he was like, no, you're going to learn how to do this from the bottom up. And you know, when you're a kid, all you want to do is go fast. Yeah. But then because he was like, hey, delayed gratification's a thing, you know, I would spend time just sitting on my motorcycle in the garage. And I would work on the hand position, and I would work on this, and I would do all the things that you're supposed to do at high speed. And so I would slow every movement down. Mm-hmm. Right? So that when I would get out on the track, I wouldn't make mistakes. So if you go to think about it, it's like what's different about cycling now, and we'll contrast this a little bit, is like cycling, you spend so much time on your bike, or you can spend so much time on your bicycle. But if you were to think about it like soccer, right? Like how much time can you really play soccer? Right? Like you can only play for minutes of a game. Very few people can play for full games. Mm-hmm. And maybe there's only games on weekends. So maybe you're just practicing 1 day a week and doing one event on the weekend, whereas cycling, you can do 7 days a week, right? And so where you think about motorcycle racing, the amount of time for which you get to invest in that on the course is very, very small, okay? Because you can only ride for like 15, 20, 30 minutes, especially when you're a kid. Like your attention is not that long, and the tracks, like you just get beat up, okay? And so what happened was we could not spend that much time racing and quote unquote training. So then all of a sudden I developed my great grandma at the time, her health was not good, and she had this old rickety exercise bike. And I was like, she was like, I'm not using it. And I was like, I will use it. And I started, I was a freshman in high school, and I started getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'd work out before school, right? Because I wanted to make sure that I could, at that time, when we got to the track, I could get as much track time as possible. Okay, because that really makes a big difference. Because if you think about it, like over an annual time span, if you spent this many, what we used to do is we used to measure gallons of gas. So it's like you would go to a race or an event for the weekend, and you'd be like, okay, well, how many gallons of fuel did you do? Right? And so that was like, and so back to when I was racing motorcycles as a professional, it was a big deal to do 4 gallons of gas in a day, right? Like you'd be like, dude, you rode a lot.
How long is that motocross race? How long is a race like that typically?
It depends. Local races were usually measured in laps. So we do like 8 or 10 laps. Mm-hmm. Okay. But when we start racing pro, it was like we called a 30+2. Okay. So when you race nationals, what we called is national, there was a national series. Mm-hmm. Okay. It wasn't one event. It was, I think it was like 16 races. I can't remember when we were doing it. But anyway, there was 2 motos in a day. Okay. And they were both 30+2. Okay. Now there's a different kind of racing called Grand Prix, which were usually 45 minutes, right? And so what we would do at the time, I didn't know anything about training or coaching, or there wasn't even anybody in motorcycles that had coaches really that we knew of. Maybe the pros did, but we didn't, when we were coming up. And so,
but those guys you had were kind of like, those were your coaches, the ones that were teaching you all the.
Well, yeah, good point. But I mean, that was more skills stuff. And so this is why I think back to your original question, when you're talking about like, what is cycling coaching? There are people that really just want, hey, I just want to write programs for people. And the way I look at it is as a mashup, where it's like, I need that Gary Semix Motocross School training where you slow down and you do the fundamentals. People need that.
Absolutely.
But they also need that programming piece. But then there's the real side application of like, okay, now I'm hauling ass. Sorry for the language, but now I'm going crazy. Now I'm going really fast. Now help me do it at speed. And you're making nuanced changes at speed. Okay, and that same thing happens in bicycles, because now all of a sudden you're trying to play your sport among 50 other people. I mean, it's a little bit different now in COVID, but you used to play your sport, ride your bike. Like you said, you go on the weekend ride and there's 40 people there. One person makes a mistake, guys, and there's there's hell to pay.
It's serious.
There's hell to pay, right? And not just in the equipment damage, but in the physical damage to the individual. Right?
Psychological too,
psychological, because confidence is a huge thing in all sport, right? And even in life. And so when I look at it, that's when I think of coaching is like, how can we bring all those things together? And I don't think that I'm the guy that I don't think I'm the one that can package it into a pretty saying, or a guy that can package it into like, oh, it's these 10 things that if you just did these 10 things. I think it's like this immensely complicated thing that I'm trying to distill into easy to digest
Back to the
nuggets.
balancing, right?
Yeah, but just for because everybody's different. Everybody learns different. You got to think about that too, right? Like
Absolutely.
I can talk to someone, and maybe most cyclists, and I'm generalizing here, but most cyclists, you know, they learn by doing, or they're kinesthetic learners. So if you're a kinesthetic learner, you learn by doing, right? And so a lot of teachers like to teach by directing. So if you guys can think of when you grew up in school, you like, well, what was always the hard part? Well, they made you sit down, pay attention and take notes. And you're like, that's not how I learn. Like, let's do some application stuff. So what I do in coaching, and Joy and I, that's why it's PE for adults, is because what we try to do is we try to have applied lessons, okay? Because those are lessons you won't forget, okay? But my wife is fantastic because she thinks about bowling for bumpers. She'd always say, well, I want to help my athletes bowl with bumpers because I don't want them to roll a gutter ball. Right. And so that's the idea, is like putting people in progressively more challenging situations.
Progressive overload,
That's
but
really giving
good,
them the skill set for which to be successful. Okay. And I'm more acutely aware of that than ever before as a dad, because, well, if you go out and your kid fails, then he doesn't want to do it anymore. Right. And then he loses the chance to have all those lessons that he could learn from that experience. Okay. So it's like, I need to have failure in his life, but I need to have a relationship with failure that doesn't come with catastrophic consequences. Okay. I need failure to be in his life so that he can go, oh, I've got to pick myself up and keep going. And I think of that for my athletes is like, I never want them to get into the point where they're like, oh, I'm so smashed, I can't continue.
I want to just touch on that because I had the opportunity to attend a camp that, you guys hosted.
Sorry.
And no, because this was something I wanted to address today on the podcast, is because what I noticed. So we did a camp in the desert.
Yes, we did.
So you guys hosted this camp in the desert, and there was 25 people there or so, 30 people, and then you had you and Joy were there, and then you had a lot of your pro friends or associates come in there. Then you had a lot of your elite riders come in there that were really good. And then we did that for 4 days. And then what I noticed about you guys was that you were so in touch with each person. So you had all these different levels of cyclists, but nobody was really, it wasn't a low level. It was either like a low or high level and then a really high level. There was nobody that was like, it's like you didn't have anybody that wasn't fit. Like they were all pretty strong cyclists, but they all had different, they were different ages, different body types, but you guys were so in tune with, you got all these different cyclists together and got them all doing these rides, and you pushed everybody individually to their utmost, but kept them all together in a group. It was the most amazing thing I've ever, like your intuition and the way that you had all these people here. It wasn't just like 3 or 4 people. Like you had this group and this dynamic happen. And I got to be in that, and I experienced some things in there which are pretty cool because it got intense. Like it got really intense.
Oh yeah, we threw down the chili.
You threw
down the chili, brother.
And we were doing it is day after day after day, and like you're talking big days. Like I think first day was 75 miles, which is a big ride, right? That's a big ride, even like that's your big weekend ride, right?
Yeah.
But then the next day was like 90.
Oh yeah.
And then it was like 115 the third day.
Yeah.
But you're talking, and these are all business people, family people, a lot of them, and they're older people too. And I remember talking to some of them and like, can we do this? And I'm like, I don't know. Like I've never really pushed myself like this before. And you were right there, like knowing you were there and you're leading it and your energy was there and just like, you can do this, you got it. And just the way that you do it, like don't pull now, go back there. The way you were just coordinating it all. And then we said, well, we're going to find out on the last day whether or not, well, not the last day, but the big day, can you do this? And there was says there's an adaptation that happened in our bodies. I've been cycling for so long, but never quite, so many years, but never to that point. But then something happened and your body adapts. And all of a sudden it's just like, that first day was 4 hours and then it's 5 hours. And then it's like big days of cycling. And then my body did adapt. And then it was an amazing experience that I could have never done on my own. Like, no matter how hard you go out on your own, you can't match if you're with a professional cyclist, with a coach, with a group. Is a different dynamic. And something happened in that pushed me to a whole nother level by attending your camp. And it's not, And it was really cool to watch it happen. And we were there as the nutrition sponsor, which was also really cool on the other end to watch all these people adapting to this really intense level and then doing it on the snack bars. And it was real food, which is a big deal, is instead of just eating gels or caffeine or, you know, Red Bulls or whatever it is, you're actually doing it on real food, which is what it took. And I saw my own product worked on all these people and work on me, because you said you got to eat every hour. And I was eating on that bike every hour. And there were times where I was pushing so hard, like I didn't want to eat. Yeah. Like I'm like, I don't think I can eat. Like I can barely like it, but you have to do it. And if you do it, the energy sustained throughout the entire process. And then it was really good. It was an amazing experience. And I want to thank you for that, but just bring it up because it was a transformation that you took these athletes through. There were some elite ones in the pros. They already knew it, but the ones that hadn't pushed themselves to that level was very cool. And the way that you handled it was just like, it's a pro, like it's so top notch. And then in your world as a pro cyclist, like your races, like you would do stage races, which are multiple days, right? So you're used to that, or, you know, like you're familiar with it, but we weren't, like going to a camp like that. I never done that before. So that was cool. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're so welcome, Leon. I need to be the one thanking you. You know, Joy and I, like, we have been humbled that so many people, like, you guys talked about bicycles a bit, and you kind of like, oh, it's, you know, it's our own adventure. And I think of the reason why cycling. So you ask yourself, why cycling? Why cycling is so much different, right? And it's kind of an obscure little sport. It's kind of weird. You know, you have to wear this like Superman outfit kind of thing. Like, it's kind of weird. Like, who wants to do that? You know, but it's because of the people, right? And it's because the people. It's this notion of freedom, like we talked about, but then it takes you to a place and gives you an opportunity to meet people in a very intimate environment, because everyone has to be vulnerable.
Right.
Okay. You have to be willing to take chances. And the good cyclists recognize that. They recognize that. And I don't mean that in a pro level. I mean, someone who's been cycling for a long time knows that it's like, at some point I'm going to have to put all my chips on the table, and it could go bad. It could go bad. And I don't mean you're going to crash, but you could get dropped. And that's, you know, there's value assessments that we make from that. Like, oh, is something wrong with me? I'm not so good, yada, yada, yada.
Your body could crack too. You could find yourself on the side of the road, just like, I can't do this. I'm off the bike, you know, and which is, I don't know, I have such a drive. It's hard for me. I'm going to go and go and go. Like I'm not going to stop. Like,
well, we're not machines, right? And that's where snack bar and things like that are really important. So that's part of the coaching, is helping people tune themselves to the output that they're going to do, right? Because you're not a machine. And a lot of, I think we do ourselves a disservice when we as athletes or in the media that we consume that talks like, okay, you can just boil it down to some template and you could just be some machine. And that's just not true, because people are unique, immensely complex individuals. You know, I went to this therapist, Abel Rendon, and is an amazing physical therapist. He helped me through some really challenging times. And he was like, Brian, you're 3 trillion cells. And the guy next to you is 3 trillion cells, but he's not the same cells. Like, it's different, you know? And so it helped me understand that as, you know, you can go down the road and be like, oh, it's guy, girl. Like, you know, we're humans. We're all the same, right? But we're so much different, right? We're so much different in all these lovely, amazing, unique ways, which means we have immense potential. So if we have immense potential, it becomes about tapping that unique potential and skill set for each person, right? And so when we think about the camps, I want to make sure that everybody has a great time, not just because I want them to have fun, but because I truly believe that people are better than they think they are, right? And we live in a world we live in a world that's meant not to stretch you, that we want everything to be convenient. Like, I want my coffee pre-made. I want this pre-made. I don't want to stretch. I don't want to have to adapt.
That's not how training works, though.
That's not how training works, exactly. But more than that, that's not how humans work. Right? Like, how we achieve our best is through stress, right? Now, we tend to think of stress as a negative thing and say, oh, you know, we don't want stress in our life. I actually don't think that. I think you want stress in your life, but you don't want an overload of stress that causes you to fracture, right? We need the appropriate amount of stress that's going to cause adaptation.
That progressive overload mentality.
Exactly. Progressive overload mentality.
And the adaptation.
Right. But the adaptation is key, okay? And I was just listening to something on the way over here, guys, and it was really interesting because it was talking about how powerful, how strongly ingrained the work ethic is really for us as humans. Like if you just think about all that we've done, like, you know, roads were not here, right? Like all of the buildings and all of the amazing innovations that have come from being human, the internet, just being able to be here right now under these lights and like talk to you guys. Like there's just so many layers here that you can't even think about, right? But we don't have that. We have not invested almost any time into rest, right? And again, I literally just was introduced to this concept because I've been exploring this concept as a coach. Is like, I have so many athletes. They're so, you guys would be so impressed. Like they bust ass. They work hard. But getting them to rest is really, really challenging. And I can only appreciate that because I have the same strife. I have the same challenge, right? Like being a workaholic is not the thing that that needs to be explained. The idea is, how do you find balance? That's what needs to be understood. Because I know you're a workaholic. I've already seen your work ethic. I've seen your work ethic. You guys work hard. You guys wouldn't be here today with me if you guys didn't have worked so hard to put all these things together.
You say it's inherent, though. I caught
no,
that.
If you think about it,
Yeah.
we want it to be like
biologically, like we have to be inherently able to just put out and put in work. And I really like that you just we're good at working. Like that's something we do as a species. Like
we're built to work.
Yeah.
We're built to work. And you know, my brother's a 20-year Marine, and you know, these guys are hardcore, just hardcore. And he would just always be like, dude, we're McCullochs, we're built to work. Right. And so it was really cool because when I started investigating, like we were thinking about how we wanted to name our son. And, you know, I looked into what McCulloch means, and McCulloch, we have, you know, it's Scottish and Irish, and I didn't know all these years, but our family has a motto, and it says "Vai e animo," and it's by strength and courage. That's what that means. And all of a sudden I was like, oh man, like my brother's been saying for years, like, Brian, we're built to work. We're built to work, you know? And it's like, that's fantastic. But now I'm trying to explore how to find that balance, because now all of a sudden I want you to think, if we want to talk about having a rich life, and I think a lot of people really want to have a rich life, look at all that we can have around us. Health is a huge component of that, and cycling allows for that.
Longevity, right? Too.
It allows longevity, health, richness, all these other things. But to be able to do that, think if you could take somebody who thinks, because to be a good cyclist, so to speak, and I'm way overgeneralizing, but you have to focus down and narrow down. It's this idea of specificity, that you have to be hyper-focused to be good at something. But if we go back to our plates analogy, now, who wants to go from 9 plates down to 1?
Who can, too?
But how rich is your life with 1 plate? Your life isn't very rich with 1 plate. A rich life has 9 plates. And I'm not suggesting that, well, if 9 plates are good, 15 might be better. I'm not suggesting that. But certainly you've got to have family. You've got to have that foundation. You've got to have a professional life, and you've got to have that sorted out. You've got to have relationships. You've got to have all these other things in your life. And that's the 9 plates concept. So the idea is that, well, we want to have all of these plates, and we want them to all be rich and full and be able to experience them to the maximum. So what I really work with my athletes is, and I should say Joy and I work with our athletes, is helping them understand the importance of rest.
Yep.
And rest is not laziness.
No.
Okay. And I want you guys to know that I'm saying that to you a little bit tongue in cheek, because like I struggle with that every day.
I do too.
Right. Cause I'm like, oh, I'm being lazy. Like I need to get up and get after it. And you don't have to look any harder into any of the media that we have available to us. And everything's like, don't be lazy, get up earlier, sleep less, do all these things. And I'm not knocking that. Some people really do need a good kick in the ass. But the people that I work with, they're their own harshest critics.
Well, we're not machines. You're going to tear your body down. If you don't, and it's not just sleep. There's a recovery, you know, that your brain.
That's the work part, though.
Because the workaholic, when you say workaholics, it's like some people listening might think, oh, they just work and work and work. But that's not really what it is for me. It's like, I just keep going and going and going. And I'm like, but it's like, it's 11 o'clock. Like, guys, we got to go to bed, because we're going to get up, and you're not going to be well. Like your health will suffer, because you have to shut it down.
Well, there's the work part to rest. That's a really key concept. And I was listening to one of your podcasts you did, and basically you talked about that idea is like, just because you're laying on the couch doesn't mean you're recovering. Like, you know, you have to be thinking about how you're recovering. You got to be stretching. You got to be doing all your pieces. And I'm like, yeah, like recovery is not laziness. It's not me sitting there and saying, "Oh, I need to recover," so I'm just sitting on the couch watching TV. It's like, no, I'm gonna foam roll. I'm gonna stretch because I have a tight hamstring, and that's like, and then I'm gonna sleep at this time. I'm gonna eat at this time. Like that to me is at least how I think about it. And what I got from listening to your podcast was that kind of came into my head. I'm like, my resting and my recovery is like, there's a science behind it. I have to time it based on how I operate best, right? When I eat, when I sleep, when I stretch. And that's the work part of recovery, I think. I mean, maybe you can elaborate a little.
Oh, definitely. Well, that's active recovery, and that's going to be the difference. So when you think of active recovery, obviously you're putting in energy towards your recovery. But the thing that I think is maybe help broaden your vision there, Ethan, is like I want you to think of it in this way. The basic understanding of cycling is like we're folded over. Okay, so everything is kyphotic. Well, all of our lives, right? We're hunched forward. We're doing it right now. Okay. We never do things that are the opposite of that, right? Back bends, other things that are allowing you to counteract that balance. Okay. So if you think about how muscles work, right? You have two muscles, one on the front of your leg, one on the back of your leg. Okay. There's more than that, but for round numbers. Okay. Right. And they work like levers. When one contracts, the other lengthens. When one contracts, the other lengthens. Okay, so you got to think about that. Now, imagine if we were just all day contracting the quadricep, right, and the hip flexors specifically, all day. This one is just getting stretched and stretched and stretched. Okay, that's not strengthening it. And what you've done is you've now shortened the effective work range of this one and lengthened this one. Okay, well, that's a real problem. That's a real problem. Why do you think people have postural issues? Okay, and so now the question becomes, how do we address that issue? Do we address that issue by lengthening this one, active recovery like you're talking about, relieving the compression of this one, that's the stretching, okay? Or do you do things that are cross-training, i.e. strengthening this one so you can bring, in this particular case, I want you to visualize your pelvis is in the middle and you've got two things hanging on it. You've got the hamstring, you've got the quadricep and the hamstring, for lack of a better term, okay, and the glutes and all this other stuff. But my point is you have two levers there, right? So you have to strengthen the back body in order to be able to maintain good posture.
And also, also lengthen the front part. So you got to do a little bit of both, a little bit of balance, right?
Right. So there's a lot of things there that and I don't want to profess to anybody or make it sound like I'm some expert here, but these are things that I'm exploring as a coach, because when you start talking about longevity, Leon, like we're talking about being able to do this day in and day out, week in and week out, month in, month out, year in, year out, because that's how we really get those layered benefits. Okay. And so to be able to do that, we have to bring maintenance into it. And yeah, it's having some sort of scientific approach, but in reality, it's like, it's having a focus and being able to know that we're being productive with our time, because stretching is great. But if I'm just stretching my shoulders, what am I doing? Right. Well, actually, I need to lengthen the front of my body because I'm always being kyphotic. Okay. So that's the one thing I want people to see is like being an athlete. That's why we call our athletes athletes. It's not because I'm expecting you to be a pro or I'm thinking that someone needs to, step up and make the commitment. Right. I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is having that care for yourself, and that self-care allows you to do well for yourself and others. So I think of it like, Leon, I think you're an excellent example of this, because I see this just in your life and the amazing leader that you are. I look at people and I say, okay, there's a pitcher of water in the middle of the room, and you go out to dinner, you go out to the Mexican food restaurant, and there's a pitcher of water, and there's 10 empty cups. That pitcher fills all those cups. That's your dad, right? That's you. You fill all those cups, but guess what? Eventually the pitcher gets empty. Okay, so we need to do things that fill up the pitcher, because 10 things are dependent. The success of those 10 people are dependent on the pitcher being able to fill them, right? Wow. And so I want you to think through that for a moment, right? Yeah. And if you thought of yourself as that pitcher, because all of us are, right? Whether it's our friends, whether it's our family, whether it's our parents, our teammates, whoever it is, there are other people that we interact with on a daily basis where we can fill their cup. Okay. And when we have the ability to do that, we damn well should, right? We should fill their cup because they need it. They're thirsting for it. Okay. But then how do we redo that for us? Right. And that's the active recovery component, is being able to make sure that you can get up in the morning and have that, take care of myself so that I can get up and get after it. So to me, that's the component. To bring it back for all the people listening is like, I want people to think that it's not just about the work. It's about being able to backfill your cup so that you can get out there and be the pitcher for the other people, whether that's your kids, whether that's your work colleagues, whether that's your family, whether it's elderly, aging family members, whoever it is, right? But that is so critical, right?
Fill in that picture.
Well, what you said when I first ever talked to you, and we were sitting out by the coffee shop in Redlands.
That's right, by Stell Coffee, baby.
Stell's Coffee, yeah. So with what you said to me that day burned into my brain because you've always said it, and I didn't really ever give it much thought until we all talked together. But you're like, everybody can be an athlete, and everybody kind of has that, could just inherently have that mindset of like, okay, just because I'm not a professional, just because I don't get paid to do this, doesn't mean I can't implement all of these strategies to make myself better as a person, because inherently that's going to make me a better pitcher, right? And I don't mean baseball, I mean the water pitcher analogy, where it's just like, I'm going to be able to fill other people's cups now because I've taken care of myself, right? And that's really important. So 100% credit, that is what you stand for then. So really big credit to you for that. But I appreciate that coming full circle right now, and just thinking about that is really cool.
Hey, can we get into a little bit of the motocross, the bike, you got the bicycle, right?
Yeah.
You got the old bicycle, but then you're a teenager, you're in high school.
Yeah,
so you're older now. If you look at I look at kids today, and I mean, I'm riding with kids that are high schoolers, and they're ripping fast. It's not like they're just starting out. They're like the ones that everybody's trying to keep up with now. At 17, 18, coming out of high school, these kids are fast. So for you at that point, so how getting the old bike and starting the training, and then how to become a professional cyclist, that's a big jump. How'd you get there?
Yeah, I lived in Northern California, in, like I said, that Bay Area there. There was a brief stint where we lived in Reno, Nevada, where after my parents got divorced. But, when you decide you want to be a professional motorcycle racer, at least at that time, things are a little bit different now, but at that time, you got to move to Southern California. It was booming, you just have to be here. This is like Mecca. You know what I mean? If you're Mormon, you're going to BYU. It's like, if you're going to be a motorcycle racer, you're coming to SoCal. That's the way it was. So when I graduated high school, I moved down here to go to community college, and was going to community college and racing full time. And I was carrying 17 units.
Where were you here?
I was I was living in Temecula at the time, because that was kind of that was the place. That was where a lot of guys were at the, and you could just go be in that environment. You know what I mean? It was like going to training camp for me, and it was like living at training camp, because it was like all these guys were so fast and they were so strong. And I started to learn, there was a lot of guys that just they did a lot to look the part, and that I never really rationalized it, but at the time that put a little chip on my shoulder, because I was like, I'm never going to look the part. I'm going to earn it every day. I'm going to earn it. And that actually ended up really hurting me, because no one ever came back to me and said, hey dude, to earn it means you have to rest, or to earn it means you need to make sure your bikes are great. And that takes time. And so you can't just train the house down. All I wanted to do was train the house down. And so it was if I wasn't, at that time, my dad was married again, and my stepmom, she just made it so that I had 17 units. She's like, no, you're not going to be a dumbass. You're going to go to school and you're going to get good grades. Otherwise, we're not going to continue to help you. And so I was fortunate enough that basically the motorcycling paid for itself. So they just had to make sure I had a place to live. And so anyway, I was racing motorcycles at that time. I was racing pro, but local pro. And then I got my pro license, which was a big deal, to get your pro card. It was whoa. So pro cycling is a little bit different than pro motorcycle racing. So pro motocross, the athlete themselves gets the pro license. So it was I had to achieve those results to be able to get on the team, to be able to get the license.
Results was it like?
You have to win a certain amount of races, and then you have to get a certain amount of points, and then you have to go to these because you got to think of it as local events, regional events, national caliber events. And the idea to be a national caliber pro, which in America is really international because everyone comes here, at that time it was I had to get local and regional event results then to be able to get a national caliber license. And then I was literally a bottom feeder at the national caliber events, and you start getting into a lot of things with motorcycling, because the motorcycles that I had, you could say they weren't the fastest, right? And so we ended up, we had a lot of challenges there, but my dad was my dad's an engineer by trade, self-taught, and he builds Formula One parts and he works for SpaceX. So like my dad is like super smart, but he never went to college or anything. He just builds everything with his hands, and so he just started doing all this crazy stuff with these motorcycles. Like he would just go crazy. I mean, like I remember vividly, like I did this when we always called my dad the mad scientist, and it was a little bit like tongue in cheek because I was like, oh great, like what are you doing here? But if you guys know anything about cars, like when horsepower goes up, reliability usually goes down. So
you're stressing that engine.
Yeah. Heat and pressure is a rough thing. So my dad was just always pushing these motors to the limit. And so, at that time we were very fortunate. I had a practice bike and a race bike. So it was like I had this beat down practice bike that was just like I maintained that. And so I just did like all the stuff to it. And it was like, it was not fast. Let's just put it that way. But it was reliable. It worked. Good. Right. But then I had this like race bike that I got to ride like 3 times, like 3 times a month. You know what I mean? Because it was always apart. But then when I get on that thing, it was just like a raped ape, dude. Yeah. It was just like, whoa, it's so. But what was interesting about it, I look back at it now and I just think like, it was so difficult because I wasn't prepared physically for what the difference was. The jump was too great. Okay. And I think that's really important to recognize as a coach, because it was as if I was riding something that was inferior equipment during the week. And I didn't recognize that because I thought I'm just putting in the hours. But the performance was such that it was lower. Okay. But then when I got on this race bike, it was so much faster. What my capacities as an athlete all of a sudden jumped twofold. Yeah. And now all of a sudden I had to recalibrate myself, and I was not old enough or mature enough to understand that I had to recalibrate myself. I was
wondering that. Yeah, like what the difference was if only riding 3 times on that race bike and training all that time on another bike. I was wondering. Yeah, so that inherently was a challenge then once you like start competing at that really high level with a high level bike and training on, a slower bike that's just
Yeah, and then again, I'm not trying to paint the picture.
But you're still in college, so you're in college. You're still on the motorcycle. You still haven't got to racing bikes yet.
No, that's a good point. Yeah, so anyway, I should wrap that up. But essentially, like, I'm
just looking at it like you're getting older and older now.
I'm like 21, 22, and then
I still haven't raced bikes yet. So
no, I didn't even. We didn't even. But I guess at that time, some of the big names in motorcycling started getting mountain bikes, and that was a big deal. Okay, so there's a guy, you guys may have heard of him. His name is Johnny O'Mara. He's an old school motorcycle legend, and he's a multi-time national champion mountain bike racer. And so he was training some of these guys, and that was the first time we heard of training. It was like no one knew about it at that time. And then, of course, you got to remember, there's no social media. There's only just like whisperings of who said he said. And so the only way you got information was what you would go to the races. And what we used to do is we'd go to the races in the motorhomes. We'd show up on Friday and we'd leave on Sunday. And so the only way you got information was networking with other riders and networking with other dads and this, that, the other. And so like you'd be like, oh, so-and-so started mountain biking. You'd be like, oh my God, I gotta get a mountain bike. Right? And so that's how it started. Like I just started riding mountain bikes for training. And at some point, I moved to Southern California. So I moved to Southern California. As happens for all of us.
So mountain bike was the first bike, wasn't the road bike then?
Yeah. So it's interesting because, like when I was 16, I went to the Sea Otter Cycling Classic. That was the first bike race I ever did, right? But I was just a dirt bike racer. I was just doing it because I was cross training, right? And so I rode a cross country race, right? On what was at that time a downhill bike. It was at like 5 inches of travel. Super and like heavy. I mean, by now people would look at that thing and be like, it's a joke. I mean,
is that the granny's bike that you had, or the
old? No. That was an indoor station.
Bike is like almost like a motorcycle bicycle, but a cross country race you need a quick bike.
Yeah, it's gotta be super light.
It's gotta be super light.
Yeah, but at that time it was very different. You know what I mean? So it's just like I was a dirt bike guy, and I was like, I want hydraulic disc brakes. I want oh my God, I want to be able to like do all this cool stuff. And so it was like you had to get that kind of bike, right? But anyway, I digress. But so
Sea Otter on the mountain bike. You tried that? How'd you do there on that big old?
I got smoked. I'll tell you this though. So I did that year. I did when I was 16. I did the dual slalom. I did the cross country, and I did the downhill all on the same bike. All on the same bike, which you don't do. You just don't do that, right? Like each bike is perfect, purpose built, right? Yeah. And so I remember. So again, you got to remember the time. So like people were like into that stuff. So they would wear like full face helmets and they would wear full moto gear and this, that, the other. So I showed up to the dual slalom with like this cross country helmet. I had my motorcycle goggles over it, Like, and I had cotton shorts and this, like, just a t-shirt. Like, I looked like the biggest dork. So in cycling, we call those Freds. Okay, so I was like, dude, Freddy goon, 100% goon, right? Okay, and I was in, like, you know, dweeb category 7 or whatever it was, right? And so I showed up and I go to the top of the you know, the little thing to do my run, and I just, like, decimate so many people. Because I was like, I was a dirt bike rider, dude. I was just like, this is easy. I was like, brakes, why touch them? Like, why touch them? Okay. Right? And so it was just like, I was jumping everything, and everyone was like, what's wrong with this guy?
Oh, that's so
And so, no, it was great. So I just decimated everybody. I just looked like the biggest dork, right?
I love that.
And so, no, but it gets better too, because everyone was like, at first, like, I did a couple of runs, and everyone's like, whoa, dude, this is awesome. And, like, you guys know me well enough to know, like, I'm not particularly great at anything, right? But, like, I could just kind of hold my own. And so I was like, oh man, I'm, like, doing pretty good. So I started to get a little cockiness. Like, so on the last couple of rounds, I started trying to, like, throw a little whip or something like that. And literally on the last one, I, like, dominated this guy, like, just smoked him, right? And then I took the last jump, and instead of just jumping it just far enough, I was like, dude, I'm going to send it, right? And that was before sending it was a thing, right? Because so on a motorcycle, what you would do is, like, you would jump. If you jump far, you change the attitude of the bike, and you land with the rear wheel, and you land with the throttle on, so that it allows the suspension to push you and propel you forward. Okay, so remember, I'm just 16-year-old dirt bike punk kid. You know what I mean? So I just send it off this jump, and I literally, like, jump past the landing, right? And I'm like, oh, no big deal. Like, I'm gonna land on the rear wheel. I'm just gonna throttle, but you can't do that. You can't do that, bro. So literally, I'm just like, I land in the rear wheel, like, on the rear wheel, front wheel slaps, dude, and I'm just like, like, it's just like, dirt sky. I just eat it so hard, and I didn't, and I like, a guy passed me, and I didn't win, you know, because of course I crashed super hard, but I mean, like, it was so embarrassing, because, like, again, everyone was like, whoa, that Fred's crushing it, and then everyone's like, ha!
We knew he was a dork.
We knew he was a dork.
Oh, man. Like,
we knew that guy. Yeah. We knew that guy was a dork. See, I look at that guy's a dork.
Doesn't matter that you did all that cool stuff. You just that last little bit. Yeah, that's great.
So that's the thing, right? Like, so cycling, and if you're gonna push yourself, you're gonna be an athlete. Like, it's always humbling. You gotta be able to get back up and go, okay.
Slap you down, man.
Okay, I got slapped down. I gotta get back up. Like, oh well. But yeah, that was it. But
so then bicycles now is coming in. So you did Sea Otter, got a taste of that.
Yeah, and it kind of went dormant for a while. You know, like I said, moved down here at that time, and
but like this is a lot of, you know, we're learning a lot about you. But to get to the, like, you're on the KHS, right? Pro cycling team.
Oh yeah. Elevate Webbyplex Pro Cycling.
What was that point then that you really fully
you've
transitioned?
Been on that team for a long time, right?
Yeah, 10 years.
So you're 10 years on, like, a top level pro cycling team.
Oh yeah, we're the best team in America.
So so how do you get? When did you join that team? How do you get to that? Like, that's, and I mean, and you're on that team, like, that's work now. Now you're talking, like, every day, right? Like,
no, that's what we do. You know, every day. I mean, I did 100 miles yesterday on my gravel bike. I did 100 miles the day before. Like, you know, my weekends are you spend 10 to 15 hours a week, 10 to 15 hours a weekend on the bike. You know, yesterday was 8 hours bike ride, right? Saturday was 5.5 hours bike ride.
On a gravel bike yesterday?
Yesterday was gravel bike, yeah.
Where'd you go?
Well, we went up to Santa Clarita, and I did a what's called the Old Ridge Route, and so we rode the old highway over up to Fort Tejon and then back down. So it was pretty, it was pretty big. It was like 11,000 feet of climbing. It was pretty solid. But that was just more of a training, like, just go adventure kind of a day. But like Saturday, you know,
how'd you get on the KHS? How did you get there?
Yeah, it's a great story, actually. So I should set the table. So a pretty important thing happened in my life. I graduated college, and I was racing motorcycles, and I just really wasn't finding that success. I was a privateer, and I was doing well. I had a lot of great sponsors, and I had built my own website, and I had done all this stuff, and kind of like sending out weekly newsletters to people and just telling them, you know, thank you for your support and making it happen. But we were just as ragtag privateer as we could get. Like, I worked on the bikes, and I rode the bikes, and I drove to the races, and I did, you know, I loaded all the stuff. You know, my dad helped obviously, and he made it happen, but it was just us, you know. And so an interesting thing happened. My dad went to get married again, and at that time, I was graduating college, and my dad and I kind of had this deal where it was like, hey, you can graduate as long as you graduate college, If you graduate with a 3.8 or better, like you're going to be able to race for just a year. You're not going to have a job, because what I didn't tell you guys is like I ended up getting a job as well. So it wasn't just racing and going to college. It was like I went to college, had a job, and we did a lot of construction. So
Okay.
I worked in a cabinet shop when I was growing up, and so like we did I did install cabinets, did chair molding, did chair rail, did
Racing, going to college, working construction.
yeah. I mean, it's just what we did. You know what I mean? It's just whatever.
Putting in work.
Oh, I mean, there's a lot of people that do that stuff. I don't want to make it sound like, oh, whatever. But, a lot of people have to, like, you choose your passion, right?
There's a lot of people that do it, but a big part of why we want to have the dialogue with you is because we want to get that energy to people that are thinking, like maybe thinking, well, I want to train, I want to ride, I want to push myself. It's like there are a lot of people that are pushing, but everybody can do it too. Like you just have to switch.
Well, then people want to make that like, oh, but my job. And it's like, well, it's not enough. You got to push more than that sometimes. You have to recover, obviously. We had a big... Yeah,
but we didn't recover then. We didn't... Motorcycling was really, really just caveman then. And, that taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about work ethic. It taught me a lot about, your hands are bleeding, but you're still going to ride. You know what I mean? Like we would just tape our hands and keep riding. Like, it didn't matter. Like if you were bleeding, the thing that motorcycling taught me that I think needs to be infused into bike racing a little more is that grit. Like you have to finish. So what you have to recognize is like, okay, if I had 15 sponsors and I had 15 sponsors, my dad at the time had 2 jobs, because that's just my dad. He's a workaholic. So he had 2 jobs, hardly saw him. And then when he would come home, he'd work on my motorcycles to make sure I had this crazy fast race bike, which, whatever, I could hardly ride the dang thing, but whatever. You crash in the race. Like, bro, there are people that depend on you. You need to get up. I don't care how much it hurts, at least finish. And that was just what it was. And so you got to think there's an equipment element. So you'd get up and like your bike's all twisted up or whatever. And you just have to be like, I'm either riding it twisted or maybe I can make some quick adjustments to deal with it, And so that taught me some really important things, because I just had to be able to finish. You have to finish, right? There's something in that.
That's the responsibility on your shoulders, man.
Yeah, but it's just doing your job, right? It's like everyone else was like, hey, man, we'll take care of the oil. We'll take care of the brake pads. We'll take care of the tires. But all you got to do is you got to finish. That's all we're asking. Like, you know what I mean? Unless it's completely unreasonable to finish. Like, obviously, there's times when I broke a physical bone and I could not finish. But, I mean, I can tell you that like, I broke my teeth, like, shattered my teeth, bit my tongue, and still finished. Like just silly stuff. But that's like ingrained in motorcycle culture. You do stuff like that all the time.
Did not know that.
Yeah, motorcycling culture. I mean, I don't know if it's like this much anymore, but like those guys are tough, bro. Those guys are really, really tough. And I was thankful to have that period of time in my life, because it just taught me like, like you can get it done. You can get it done. You know what I mean? Like I can be pretty broke up and I can still finish.
On the cycling team, when you got onto the cycling team, is that a mountain team or a road team?
Well, it's always been road, and that's kind of an interesting story too. So I know, I'm sorry, I keep not getting.
I just want to hear it. I want to.
Yeah, it's like so. Yeah, long story short is I come this really tough time in my life with my dad is getting remarried, and that woman is like, I was supposed to be able to race for a year and just race, and I'd kind of been like working on that, right? This woman basically says, without giving you my sob story, this woman is like, to my dad, it's him or me. So bye-bye, Brian. You're not living at home anymore, and you're not getting support. So I had to move out. So anyway, ended up selling my motorcycles, and I didn't, I ended up working for a magazine. But how I got back into it is at that time, that's how I got into road cycling, was that I found that I still had this competitive desire, because I had to get out of motorcycle racing. And when I got back into motorcycle racing, got back into road cycling, I was like, whoa, oh my God, it was the only thing that you could go fast. And you could feel that exhilaration and have the freedom, right? And you could just you could push yourself so hard, because it was like having an exoskeleton, because I could go so hard, I could just let it out. Because at that time, just to be honest with you guys, I had a lot of anger. You know what I mean? I had a lot of anger in my life, and the only way that I could channel that in a positive direction was I would just get on my bike and I would just ride that thing until I destroyed myself. And it was really, really good, because at the same time, I met all these wonderful people in the Redlands area. And the Redlands area is immensely respected for its cycling culture. Like there's a couple of Olympians that have gone there, a number of national champions. Like it's a really, really cool area. And somehow I just stumbled in that area, and like basically the heads of state were like, you know, I was just some dork that came on their group ride.
Fred.
Literally, like I think I had a T-shirt on that I cut the sleeves off. It's cotton, which you don't do that. Don't do that, right? Like unless you do that when I'm around, then I'll be like, okay, I know this guy. Like, hey, I've been you. Yeah. I've been you. I don't forget, right? But like everybody else can be like, no, Fred, get out of here, right? But I went out there and I was like making dirt bike noises, riding these road bikes in the dirt, and like people, you just didn't do that then. You just didn't do that. Road bikes stay on the road, mountain bikes were on the ground. When I was riding all over the place on these group rides, and people were just like making dirt bike noises and stuff, people were just like, you're just weird, right? Such a dork, right? And so all the local guys like would come over and they'd be like, okay, dude, we don't talk to nobody. Like you don't give direction, because it's like, hey, we're, you know, it's kind of like this little enclave, like you don't share secrets. That's not how cycling works. You don't share secrets.
No. That's what I want to bring that point up, because that's one of the beautiful things I love about you guys. You enjoy and Big Wheel Coaching and what you do. And it's not a plug for Big Wheel Coaching. It's for real. Because I know a lot of cyclists. I know a lot of pro cyclists, and so many of them, they don't share. Like it's like
they don't share.
And I share, like in life, like if people want to know about investment real estate, it's not like, oh, well, you make an appointment. It's like, no, I'll tell you, it's simple. Like, this is how you do it.
Yeah.
Oh, you just broke that down easy. I understand. Yeah, share the
that's
knowledge.
That's a life thing, though, because people are weird with information in general.
When I started cycling, I come in, I'm this big dude. I'm like 215 pounds.
Yeah.
And I got hair all over my legs, got the shirt like you, cut off, total dork. They're like, oh, you go in Clydesdale. I'm like, what's Clydesdale? People 200 pounds and over. I'm like, okay, just go.
It doesn't matter. I'm going to destroy them too.
Yeah, they're like, yeah, like loser. They were like that. They were really me.
Oh yeah, no, Clydesdale definitely had a negative connotation for sure.
Like,
and they had Athena too. I don't know. You did that. Was nobody.
Clydesdale.
It was like that. It's like you go over there with all those fatties. So I was like, it was really like that. I was like, oh really?
I'll show you.
Decimated the group, right? 20 minutes in front of all of them. They're like, all of a sudden they're like, oh, you're different. I'm like, well, yeah, you know, and then it goes to, you keep going up, and it goes to sport. Well, it goes to beginner, decimated that group, go to sport, and I'm lining up with really lean, like, guys, and I'm still big, and I'm thinking, what am I doing here? Yeah. But it's cross-country mountain bike racing, right? That's where I started, and it's like they're all running their mouths at the beginning, but you get an hour into it, and you're back on this climb, and you're, like, passing them, hey, man, how's it going? And you get to the end of the race, and it's like you're on the podium, and they're like, how'd you do that? I'm like, just go for it. Like, just, you know,
send it.
It's like I've been riding bikes since I was a kid, like a little
You guys are like cyclists. I'm not a cyclist. I grew up playing soccer right now and weights and jiu-jitsu and stuff, but I never and I have a really good appreciation from it because I've seen it with you. I've done it myself. And like, you know, the other day we did Everesting. That was insane. That was pretty legit. Yeah, so I have a really good, I feel like, appreciation for just the mentality of a cyclist. It's like very common in everybody. It's very intense, and this sport is like all of you are so competitive and so intense, and even like the fun training rides like very quickly change to be but you know, at the end of the day, like, we're all out here to push it, and I kind of appreciate that about the sport. But back to that, you know, lacking of information thing. So then where did you finally, who told you not to be afraid?
Oh, I don't know if anybody ever told me not to be afraid. But
how did you kind of break into that group?
Well, yeah, I'm just too dumb to quit, man.
I mean,
that's really what it is.
And you're probably getting to the front of these rides, or you're fast. Like
I was riding at the front. You know, I was riding at the front, and I like to go fast. So whenever it slowed down, I just keep going hard. And so they were just like, oh, okay, whatever. And then eventually, like, again, I met some great buddies, and they were just like, you know, these guys. I think this is why. You know, when people ask me why cycling, I'll tell you why cycling. Because at that time, I met guys that were about 15 years older than I am, and they're all successful, hardworking business guys. I'm probably, you got to think mid-20s. Mm-hmm. So I met guys that are in their 40s. They're established in their businesses. They're established in their professions. They've got families. They've got kids, and they're still getting after it. Mm-hmm. And I look at these guys. I didn't have any big brothers. I'm the oldest. I didn't have any older family siblings to look up to or anything like that. So I look at these guys like these guys are my big brothers. And I couldn't put a term on it at that time, but now I can understand. It's the term mentorship. Mm-hmm. And these guys took me under their wing, and they were like, this is too raw. You're too much of a dork. We're going to help you. And how they did it, they didn't say it like that. They're like, hey, we want you to be on our team. Mm-hmm. And I was like, team? I mean, I did team sports when I was a kid. I played a little bit of baseball, and I was just terrible at it. Just terrible. And so now I had this opportunity to be on this team. And so you got to think, I always thought of motorcycle racing as teamwork because my job was to finish that damn race, right? I pushed my bike across the line more than once. If the bike fails, I will still finish. Okay. So you got to think like now, okay, I'm taking that very seriously. And I'm like, okay, these men who are very well established, you know, I mean, you may or may not know some of these names, but like Scott Tickmeyer, Scott Welsh, you know, these guys are legends, you know, Mark Love, Charlie McLeod. We have all these guys that were like legends in that area, right? They were just my boys. And they were like, you know, they never said, don't let us down. They didn't have to say that. They just knew that I wasn't going to, right? But they were like, I was always looking for and yearning for someone to hold me to a higher standard because I believe that we are capable, immensely capable of so much in life, you know? And when these guys held me to that higher standard, I stepped up, you know? And it was like, I look back at it now, and I'm a little bit emotional about it actually, you know, like, I needed that so bad in my life. I needed someone to be like, dude, you're better than this. Like, come on, you're better than this. Like, not in a negative way, not saying, hey, you're messing off, but like, you can do this. And it meant so much to me that those guys believed in me. And so that's why I think of like as a coach, I think that is like, that's so important to just say you believe in somebody. You know, in this world, I've not worked that much in the corporate world, but I haven't worked enough in the corporate world to know that, like, you don't get attaboys from your boss. Your boss is just trying to cover his own ass so that he doesn't get yelled at. And if he gets yelled at, shit rolls downhill. And so then all of a sudden you're getting yelled at. Okay. And I look at that and I just don't even want to be in that environment. I want to be in an environment where we're lifting people up, where you're surrounded by people that want you to do well. Okay, and they're going to help you. If I have resources to help you, Leon, I'm going to get you whatever it takes.
I know that about
whatever
you.
it takes, bro.
You do it.
And so it's in my mind I didn't recognize it, but those men I just mentioned in that moment, they invested in me and were like, you can be more.
But that's a beautiful thing because you did something with you, like just by being you, by being just always there, always pushing, right? Like you stood out to them. And so that is really beautiful. It's like you put in all the work, you put in all this blood, sweat, and tears, and they're like, look, we're going to take you under our wing, come be on our team because we see a fire in you, right? Like that is a special thing. So, you know, kudos to you for that. So then what team did you join?
Well, at the time, it was kind of an interesting story. There's a funny little story, side note, okay? So we go to basically our first race, and the team was called Citrus Valley Velo. Oh, yeah. Okay, so that's just a club.
I was on Citrus Valley.
Yeah, and they're super. We still ride with them to this day, and they're super good guys. But at that time, okay, so remember when I talked about motorcycling was a little different because the athlete themselves has the pro license. Well, in cycling, the team possesses the pro license, and the team selects their riders to be pros. So you may have the level to be a pro, but until you are selected for a team, you're not a pro. Okay. So this team, Citrus Valley Velo, they were a club team. Okay. And they were associated with what at the time was the most dominant pro team, which was called HealthNet. Okay. And you might have seen these green jerseys rolling around. And so that was the deal, was that the HealthNet team was also Citrus Valley. So we go to this very first race, and I'm with my buddy Mark and Scott Welsh and Scott Tickmeyer and all these guys. And we show up and we were wearing the pro kit. At this time, I didn't recognize that we were associated with a pro team. So we're wearing the pro kit. We wore the same exact kit. Okay. And we went out and we won like category 5 or category 4, which are like the lowest 2 levels. Okay. We won. We went 1-2 that day. Okay. I can't remember if I won or Mark won, but whatever. The whole team did it. We all worked together and we won, and we rolled into like this thing like rock stars. And the pro, because we had the same thing as a pro team, they had like set up this little like VIP area for like the pros. Yeah. And we walked in after like we were Cat 4s, and they were like, "Oh, hey guys, you're here early. You're here early. Come on over in." And we didn't even recognize it. Like again, I'm just some mid-20s or late 20s or whatever. I'm just a punk. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like I roll in, these guys are like, "Wow, you guys won that race so dominating. That was so awesome." And we're like, "Yeah, we had a good time. It was the first time doing team strategy. We're so rad, you know. Like we were so high. We were just jacked, dude. We were just so fired up, you know." Yeah. And then literally my buddy's like, "Bro, they think we're the pros. And I'm like, so we're like, oh, miss, I'm sorry, you got us confused. We're like, we're stunt doubles. We are not pros. We are not pros. So anyway, long story short. So, I just kept going and racing. And then,
those guys though in that 4-5 races, they're older than you though.
Oh yeah. They were all masters guys, but they wanted to race. So that was kind of the thing, is that they, cycling has masters racing, which is anything over 35, and sometimes over 30, depending on where you're at in the country. But so masters racing is obviously, so you're racing amongst your peers. But they have what's called elite or category racing, where it's no age bracket. So juniors can race, everyone can race. So in theory, that's like the best of the best, so to speak. Well, all these guys that I was just sharing with you, Mark Love, Scott Techmeyer, whatever, they were like, hey, we'll race the category race, even though they're masters, so that we can race with you, Brian, and so that we want to help you, right? And I was helping them too. It went both ways. We were really good teammates that way. And it was just the coolest thing. Yeah. It was just the coolest thing, because those guys, I recognized that it was much safer for them to race the masters race. It was also it was more predictable to race the masters race, because everyone's like, hey, I got to go to work on Monday. Whereas like the elite races are a little bit like, it's a wild, wild west, man. You just got to you got to be good. You got to be on your A game, and these guys are willing to take that risk, because they're like, okay, like we'll bring our show pony and you bring your show pony, and let's see how it goes, and like the thing they didn't, maybe they recognized it at the time, but like, I wanted to win, but I wanted us to win, and I didn't care how we won. I didn't care if I won or if Mark won or Scott won. Like a win is a win is a win, right? That's how a team works. And I was thirsting for that in my life. And, so much, what's contrary to cyclists, most cyclists are like, I want to win. It's a very individualistic sport. You train by yourself, you do all this stuff, right? And I was just like, I don't care. I just want us to win. Like whatever it takes, we're just smash these guys. Nice. Like whatever it takes. And it worked. It was fun. And those guys, we all kind of got our category upgrades together and had a lot of fun. And we built lifelong relationships with these guys. Like I still see them all the time. They were all, in my wedding or at my wedding.
That's cool.
They're all they're Seamus's uncles. You know what I mean? Like
that was the genesis of you and cycling. And
so how do you get from there to the number one team in the U.S.? Yeah,
I got a call from. Well, at that time we started this team. It's called Possibilities, and we raised. There's a team. There's a program out of Loma Linda which is called Possibilities, and it's how they help they help disabled community members, and at that time. They wanted to help able-bodied people integrate into the disabled community and help. That way it would go both ways, right? So it was like, it wouldn't be so weird to like see somebody and help someone in a wheelchair. You would know how that person needs help. And so that was the idea, is that we as able-bodied ambassadors could help them. So we had this team, and I ended up, racing my quote first year as like what you would call semi-pro or category 1 with them. And I did really well. And I just, again, like I told you guys, I had a lot of anger in my life. I had a lot of like chip on my shoulder. And that was the way that I could channel it. That was the way I could like focus it. And long and the short of it is, I got a call from a gentleman named Paul Abrahams, and I was working in the construction business at the time. I spent a little time in the mortgage business too, working for Financial 2000 there. Yeah,
I remember them.
You know them. Yeah, you know them. But anyway, so. A couple of jobs, just not floundering, but just trying to find my way in the world. And at one point, I'm racing category 1, and Paul Abrahams, who at the time we were cash call mortgage cycling team, Paul calls me and he says, hey, I didn't know this man at all. And he was from Orange County, and he was like, hey man, we're gonna take this team and we're gonna make it a pro team. We're gonna work towards being a pro team. I need you to be a part of it. And I was like, man, I got a 50-hour-a-week construction job. I think I was dating Joy. Yeah, I was dating Joy. Maybe I'd already proposed to her. I can't remember. But anyway, I was on the fast track for the construction business I worked at. Like, I worked for the two brothers that owned it. I worked for them, and they wanted me to work towards, being an executive in the business. And so I was like, okay, well, I don't need this distraction, but I really I'm super passionate about it, And so, long story short is, that was where I said yes. And
that became the KHS Elevate team?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just been the same. I've been on it since I was the first person that signed, and to this day, I'm still here.
Are you still on the team today?
Oh, yeah, same team. Still on.
So you're still going to race? You're still racing pro right now?
Yeah, we it's all online right now. But yeah. Yeah. I mean, we'll see if I do it next year, but I mean, like,
what made you choose, you know, so you, like you said, you got to a kind of a crossroads. Like you're either going to pursue the construction.
Yeah. Well, I still worked.
Right. But what made you say, let me take a chance on this?
You know, Paul Abrahams is an amazing man. He has given so much to my family and done so much for me personally. Like I said, guys, I've had my own demons to conquer and my own challenges in my life, and racing is an emotional thing. If you're going to put yourself out there and you're going to be vulnerable, you know, sometimes you come up short, and I've come up short plenty of times, and I've not been happy with the how I've reacted sometimes, you know, mostly self-destructive to me, you know, not trying to hurt anybody else, but I didn't realize at the time that when you do self-destructive behavior, you hurt the people around you because you remember you're the pitcher. Right. And so if all of a sudden I no longer have water to give anyone else, then I've hurt them. I've starved them for something. And Paul is someone who's kind of helped me understand that concept and helped me process through a lot of that in my life. And I wouldn't say that I would say even now that I'm still on a journey trying to work that out. But you know, he just is a man, like his tactical and strategic ability is like second to none. He's amazing, super hardworking. I mean, you know, when we first started the team, I shouldn't say we started the team. He started the team and he brought me on board, and I just was like, he wanted me to treat it like I owned a portion of it, and I did. And you know, like I would help him work on bikes, and I would help him do all stuff. Like traditional cycling is like riders are like, the riders just ride. That's all you want to do. Right. And that's just not my vision of team. My vision of team is like everyone is going to pull. When there's work to be done, everyone is going to pull until the job is done. Because if we spread that load across more people, it's going to get done faster with less overall fatigue on the entire effort than that. Right. You can't apply that lesson all the time because sometimes we do have to make sacrifices of individuals in the competition. But for the most part, you know, I really believe that down to my core, and that's not always gone well in cycling because cycling is very quick to just be like, oh, we protect our very best and we just get rid of all the other ones, you know. And so sometimes I've ran into problems with that, and it's my own fault, but you know, or maybe my own, you know, virtuing or whatever. I don't know what you want to call it, but so anyway, Paul, you know, he wouldn't let me quit. You know, a couple of times I wanted to quit, you know, and he just was like, no, you're fine. What
was your role in the team? Like so you guys are traveling all over the country?
Yeah, I mean, I was still working, you know what I mean? I would just take time.
Out of the U.S. too, or only in the U.S.?
At that time, we were just traveling mainly in the U.S. It wasn't really until the team became Elevate that we really got to travel, and we got to go to Tour Taiwan. I did Tour Taiwan 4 times. Can't remember. We tour of Alberta, did a bit of international racing, national caliber racing all over. And it was like, we never really put a name on it or a title on it, which was really tough. I think in hindsight, I would have liked to have a little bit of a title because it would have given me an opportunity to focus my energies. But it really wasn't until the later years where Paul was like, hey, you know, I just need you to focus on being like the best domestique. You know, I just need you to be able to focus on that. But that's really what I was doing from the beginning, is that, you know, if you look at the guys that are really successful right now in cycling, at least in America, a lot of them have been my teammates, and they are, I've worked with and for them. And I think the fundamental challenge with road cycling is that there's a lot of you work for me, right? And I think the nuance there is work with me, and that everyone has a role to do. And that's been really challenging to fold that into some of the younger riders' mentalities, is helping them understand that it's with, not for.
So elaborate on that, because like the way I understood it, and like when I would see the Tour de France, it's like they would ride and there would be like a star rider, and everybody would like basically sacrifice to get the star rider across the line. And what you're describing doesn't sound like that to me. That sounds more like, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who gets across the line as long as our team gets across the line. Or how did you navigate that mentality, and how are you said now you're trying to instill a different thought process into younger riders? Yeah,
I want you to think cycling is an old European sport. And in old European sport, it's also extremely established. They have a lot of money, And so you can buy marquee riders. And when you buy marquee riders, you build a team around that marquee rider. So that's you work for me. I'm the star, you work for me. Okay.
Right. Okay.
And where we started, when Paul started the team, if you look at the team as individual riders in 2010, so he started the team in 2011, so that was the first year. And 2010, 2011, I can't remember. But anyway, before that, collectively, the 8 of us had only won one race. One race. Okay, we were on separate teams, but we'd all race together. Okay, and we'd won one race. Okay, and it wasn't me. Newsflash, it wasn't me that won a race. But then we got on the team, and we started with this like all for one mentality. You know, it was like Three Musketeers kind of thing. And so we started with that mentality that it was like racing is really challenging, and it's like chess. You don't start the chess game saying my queen is going to put you in checkmate. Yeah. You start the game with we just need to achieve checkmate. Right? So it's a very different way to start the program. So when you understand it from that standpoint that we were going to start from, we have 8 resources. We have 8 tools that are very sharp and very capable. And this is how we're going to apply them and how we're going to apply force to achieve what we want to achieve. That was a very different thing. Okay. And so we achieved success and we worked our way to being the best team in America. But we won more races. From that very first year, we won more races than any other team in America. We beat pro teams at that time because the way it works is you're called domestic elite because you have to spend a lot of money to get the team to get the pro license. Okay. So we didn't have that money. We were just this ragtag group of dweebs, you know. I shouldn't say that. I was a dweeb. They were all cool, you know. But that's how it worked, you know. I mean, we had these amazing tools. I mean, we had guys that were just super good, and we were just all hungry and fired up, you know. And we were like, if I needed help, I'd be like, boys, I need help. And most of the time, like by nature, I was just like, hey, how are you? Do you need help? And so the guys just needed more. Like I would ask if they needed help, and they would say, yeah, I need some help. And I'd be like, all right, I can get that done.
When you mean help, you mean in the race?
Yeah, during the race, it's like, you know, I move them up, or I would put them in the right position, or I would help them.
So you'll pull for them.
Oh, 100%.
Well, like, let's break that down real quick, because you know, especially for me as a non-cyclist, and like, I understand what drafting is, but maybe our listeners, some of them are not going to. And like, what is a Peloton? What is like the technical part that you're helping them? Like, what's that game you guys are playing, that chess game on the bike? What is that like?
Yeah, I think we should set the table. Like, cycling is very different than other sports, because in other sports, you play against one team. Okay, so you have a 50% chance of winning, or a 50% chance of losing. In cycling, there's an infinite number of teams, right? So in most of the cases we race against, in professional racing, we probably have 15 to 20 teams we're racing against, right? But in a local criterium or something like that, it could be more, because there's just more kind of a ragtag group of folks, right? Less organization. So it becomes much more difficult to create calm, okay? So when I think of a peloton, just think of very simple, like a group of cyclists riding in close proximity together. That's a peloton. Very, very loose term, okay? But the important thing for our listeners to understand is that a peloton is more aerodynamic than a fighter plane. Okay, we expend energy and save energy as a group much differently than just us working. So if you and I are playing soccer together and we want to run across the field, we both have to do the same amount of work. Right. If you're faster than me or I'm faster than you, it's because we're more fit, or because we've trained that, or something like that. Cycling, if you go run across the field and I run in your draft, right? Or I'm sorry, cycling, not soccer. You wanted to go somewhere and I did it in your draft. I would do it with 20 or 30% less energy.
Right.
Okay. And that's that last burst you need to dominate in this finish. Okay. And so that's how we work together. Is there's a lot of things that are done in the race that no one really sees. You have to think it's like a play that's happening, that there's a whole lot of things happening inside the play that you don't even know, because it's like backstage, but it's right in front of you, right? Like, it's like I ride up to Leon and Leon's like, Brian, I'm feeling good. Like, I want to sprint today. And I'm like, okay, I'll get you to, you know, there's 4 turns on the course. I'll get you to make sure that you are first coming out of turn 4. And you're like, that's all I need. Wow. Right. And what you understand is like that takes to be able to do that tactic. There's a couple of things. There has to be trust.
Yep.
Right? Number one, there has to be trust. He has to trust me, and I have to trust him. Okay? And the reason why it's two-way trust is because I'm giving up my chances of winning
Right.
to make sure he has a chance of winning. And what's sad about cycling is that a lot of people, well, maybe sad isn't the right word, but statistically, people play not to lose. They don't play to win. Okay, that's just statistically speaking. If you put 10 balls on a green and start putting after it, people will putt for par. They won't putt for birdie. Right? People don't take chances. They just want to make sure they don't lose. Okay, I'm not wired like that, and that's where I think in the coaching process, it's really important to help people start making that shift to play to win. Okay, and that's a very important shift. Okay, and so a lot of my young teammates now, they play not to lose, and I don't. That's not how we operate. If we're going to be the best team in America, or if you're going to be the best cyclist in America, you got to play to win. Okay, but you can't just be cavalier. You can't just be like, you're still human. Okay, so back to Leon and I, we know that, okay, I'm going to go as hard as I can to get you to the corner, and then we're going to unleash it. Maybe he gets on the podium. Maybe he makes a mistake. Something happens, right? And so the important thing about being a team, and again, this is all stuff that I'm just sharing with you guys that I see as missing sometimes in cycling, is like, you have to be able to allow people to make mistakes, because that's the only way that they grow. Okay. But the expectation from many people is, I led you out, so I did a favor for you. You owe me a favor.
Win.
Right. Well, yes, the implication is win.
Or leave your heart on the field, maybe?
Well, that's more generally the piece, right? So the idea is like, if I'm going to give you everything, as long as he gives everything, we're fine. And that's it, right?
Even if I don't win, it's okay, as long as I gave it, because that's the trust factor. Because if he's going to sacrifice, because like he could be in that race and going really, he could be really strong that day, and he could be one of the top riders in that race. He could lead me out in that final turn, and he could come in 50th, like all the guys could just go by him because he gave everything to get me there. Yeah. But I got to give everything to try to. But I could make a mistake.
Right.
I could.
You
crash.
could get a flat, it could happen.
Something could happen. I could slip.
So both of you, okay, so let me think about it like this then, back to what you talked about, being vulnerable and playing to win. And sometimes you got to be vulnerable to play to win then. Because
I think you have to be. I don't think you sometimes. I think it's a prerequisite.
Yeah. Right.
You have to be.
So then you take your vulnerability by getting him to that last turn, that last corner.
Yeah.
Then he takes his vulnerability by like, I'm going to be on the big spotlight trying to win right now for everybody to see. So if I make a mistake, it's really like everyone's going to know I made the mistake. But both of the teammates have to be okay with understanding, okay, he gave his all, and look, maybe it worked, maybe it didn't, but we played to win.
Yes.
So that's beautiful.
Yeah, well, but it's not always that obvious, right? I mean, you got to understand, I've got like 15 years of racing that helps me understand that now, and that's not something that's common in cycling culture. What's common in cycling culture is, I led you out, you didn't win, well, hey, next time you're leading me out. It's it's tit for tat. Yeah. You know what I mean? And what you have to understand is like, because we race so few times, because it's very demanding to race and there's a lot of things going on, cycling is very unique because there's so many factors that are out of your control. Okay, in traditional team sport, you've got all of these elements that you can control, and therefore you do control them, either from coaching or training or otherwise, making sure that all those things don't go wrong, so that hey, when we run this formation in basketball, when we run the screen, we get the shot, and 9 times out of 10 we make the shot because we've practiced it. It doesn't work like that. Like, I could get Leon to the last corner and he could stand up and his gears jump and he could just like get passed by 5 guys. Yeah. Right? Like, it just could happen, right? It could also just as easily happen that we went through the corner so fast, right, that like we didn't see something and he slides out, or I slide out in front of him. It's all of it's happened, right? And that's where there's this degree of grace that is very difficult. Cycling is a cruel teacher sometimes, right? Because you do 9 things out of 10 right and you lose, right? And sometimes you get lucky and you do 4 things out of 10 right and you win, right? And so what happens is people become even more risk averse, because they're like, well, when I take chances, because that's how we learn, right? As humans, that's how we learn. Like when you do something and you're successful, you replicate that. When you do something and you're unsuccessful, it's like, duh, don't do that, right? And so what you have to do, you're constantly trying to battle that piece that's just innate in you, is that you have to battle that, so that you're like, wait a second, I know this didn't work out last time, but it was only because one little piece of it didn't go wrong. So we're going to do all of it again. We're going to put in all all of that effort to get there, right? Because it's not just me getting you to the front, it's us riding for 60 minutes, very intelligently up to that point.
And there's other guys too. It's not just me and you, because you have a team, because you have
there could be 8 of us.
There could be 8 of us that are all working together. And then in the end, it's you leading the guy out, leading me out, or however it works out. But there's other guys in there that have all helped us for that 60 minutes. Yeah.
And so you asked earlier, like, well, what is my job? And I expressed to you that I wish I had a title for it, but I didn't. And what I've come to recognize is that my job was, if you think of cycling as momentum, and we talked about momentum and confidence. If you think about it, my job was to start the momentum. Because once you set the dominoes in line, the dominoes usually just fall in line. Okay? Like, very rarely do the dominoes not do what the dominoes are supposed to do. You know what I mean? And so what I want you guys, or what I want to share with everyone is, I guess what I've learned is, I wanted to be the guy at the end, because I wanted to be the one that was like making the final call, helping, like making sure every little detail went right so that we nailed it. Yeah. And Paul always challenged me to be the first guy. And I thought that meant that I was disposable. And for a long time, my ego, I would say even now, struggles with that, right? Because I was like, well, I'm just disposable. And I didn't understand the magic in what he was saying, that it was like, no, you're so important, because once you do this, everyone follows your example and they just go for it.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's never been put to me like that. But now that I understand it like that, I understand, like, man, there's so many lost opportunities because of that. And so the self-discovery along that line has really led me down, like, to do a lot of understanding of what leadership is and what leadership can be, and how to be a good follower as well as being a good leader, and how that's very important. So, Well,
that brings when you bring that up, that makes me think that's what makes you a great coach. So not because I've known you now for a while.
Yeah.
We've got to ride together. It's some pretty intense levels, and we've shared a lot of things. But I've known a lot of coaches, and then, my son's growing up playing soccer at a high level, and then even a higher level too. I've seen a lot of coaches. I know how they work. And you might sometimes have great players. They might be the greatest player. Yeah. They're a lousy coach. Like, they're not a very good coach. Just because you're great at a sport doesn't mean you can transition into being some great coach. But when you look at you, and you've shared your life story, but that's why you're a great coach, is because, to me, it's not about you being first. It's like your values and your passion in your life to create something for other people to have an experience, whatever it is, to be their best, to challenge themselves, to get all their plates going. Maybe they don't want to be first. Maybe they just want to complete the fondo, Yeah,
but that's a win for them.
That's a win for them.
That's a win for them.
You need a great coach to get you there, and a great coach is you can rely on it. And like I said, at the camp, I saw you do that, and I witnessed it firsthand what it is, and it's really good. And Joy too. Joy's an amazing coach. You two together, your team is like your big wheel coaching team. What you put together was just, I've never seen anything like that before. And I've been around cycling for a while, and you're a great coach. And I think that all of that experience in racing, just because you're not the star guy all the time, that's in the limelight. It's like, but that might not have built you into the great coach that you are today.
Well, you're like an unsung hero too, as far as the actual athletics being the athlete part, not just the coach, because, we have it in soccer too, where you see the defenders, sometimes they get called the unsung heroes, because the whole time, every game, they are throwing their bodies on the line. They're taking shots, kicked, and nobody is, when the goal gets scored, usually it's the forwards that score the goals, or the midfielders score the goals. Nobody's like, wow, look at what that defender did. He stopped that almost goal. They're like, no, look at the guy who scored the goal and won the game. But if he hadn't stopped that shot, like, the guy who scored wouldn't have mattered as much. So they call the defender the unsung hero, because if he hadn't have made that first jump, that first commitment, like you make that first, okay, who's gonna start us winning right now, like what you did, it's like nobody's gonna win the game in the end, right? So that is a beautiful thing, and we call it the unsung hero. So it's like you like you said, your coach, your people, they're like, you take that first leap to say, okay, who's feeling good, who's gonna go for it? I'll lead you out. Like, You know, I think that's kind of really a beautiful thing, and as not just a coach, but as an athlete too, because that makes the team work.
Oh yeah. Well, it takes a lot. You know, you're very kind for saying that, but you know, I just do my part. Like, I just want to do my part right and do my part to the best of my ability. And a long time ago, I was introduced to this concept of leading by example, and over the years, I've just really appreciated that and seen that and seen how important it is when people do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I just want to make sure that those guys know, and any of my teammates, you know, they can call me anytime. They know, like, on the bike or off the bike, like, I got your back. Well, you know what I mean? That's just how we operate.
I was really, really excited is not the right word, but really grateful that you would come to the podcast today and that we could have this experience, because I knew that you're an onion. I knew there's layers, and when we pull it off, I knew there was, because you don't get to be at your level in your life. And I don't mean just a pro cyclist, but the man that you have become. There's so much that has to go through. There's so many successes, failures, emotions, heartbreaks, you know. And professional sports is very emotional. Your defender story, they could work their ass off for 90 minutes. 0-0 could be the best game. They make one mistake, that goal is scored. You see them on the ground crying.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's so emotional and passionate, but you got to get up. You got to go back out there.
And your team should be there to pick you up, right? And they should be there to say, hey, look, like, we got your back. Like, I know you missed that, but hey, that's part of the game. Sometimes you lose, right? They can't get on you for it.
So that's if you gave it your all.
And you were vulnerable, right? 90 minutes and you made one mistake. Like, you to win right there, you put yourself out there. Like, your soul was born right there, you know, in front of everybody. Same with cycling, you know, you put yourself out there to win, because you're saying, I'm going to be the guy that's trying to win now, right? Everyone's watching you, because you already said, like, I'm going to be the guy that's trying to win. So people are going to expect that from you, right? When you fail, people want to say, oh, he failed. Look at him. He's a Fred. Go back to the story. But that's not, like, you can't be afraid to make yourself vulnerable. And I think, you know, you addressed that today. And like you're talking about the defender too. It's like, you know, yeah, you're going to lose sometimes, but that's okay. You know, because then you have your team, you know, you have big wheel coaching. They'll pick you up. They'll put you back together. And we'll go back out there and try to win again.
It's so important to have a coach. We've learned that all along in our lives, even in business. Like, you just get a coach. Like, whatever you want to do. Like, you want to learn to play the piano, go get a coach. You call it a teacher, call it whatever you want. It's the same idea. You want to be successful in business, cycling, weightlifting, yoga, whatever it is. Go find a master, and hire them, and have them help you achieve what you want to do. And you are a true master. Like and it's not in just my humble opinion, because I've been around, you know, like I recognize leadership, mastery, and you're the real deal. And I've seen that with you from day one. You are the real deal, like a true, you care, like it's coming from inside your heart and soul. Like, and I see you when you're with people, like, it's like you want it for them. Mm-hmm. If they come to you and they're like, I want this, you're like, you want this?
We're going to manifest it.
We're going to get this, you know, and like, I'm going to be there for you. And it's like, that's your coach. You have a bad day, you call your coach, you get in touch with your coach. And then plus your camps, you get to bring all that experience to where it's not just on the internet. It's not just, well, it'll you know, COVID, whatever, it'll pass. Things will evolve. You know, it's like,
oh, sure.
Cycling in the future. I mean, cycling's not over just because of COVID. There'll be races again. Peloton. It's going to be close. Maybe there's disclosures. Maybe it's different, whatever it is, but it'll all eventually work its way back out.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I'm not worried about that, because what I care about is I care about the people. Mm-hmm. And as long as I just continue to look out for their best interests, like my dad told me when I was very young, he was like, hey, if you worry about your paycheck, it's always going to be not enough zeros, right? If you worry about doing a good job, you don't have to worry about the zeros,
right?
You know, and maybe money should be a greater motivator in my life. It's really not, but you know, obviously we all have bills to pay and this, that, the other, but I just think for me, it's just such a privilege to be a part of this journey. And like, when I get the opportunity to coach someone, Leon, it's like, I learn so much from that process too, right? It helps me grow so much. And I appreciate that, because I want to be better. I want to get better. I want to help people minimize the impact of mistakes, right? I don't want people to have to walk around and, you know, like the hardest thing for me to hear as a coach is like when somebody's like, oh, I have a bad back. It's like, talk to me about that. What's going on? Why is that bad? Have you done anything? Like, have you exhausted every resource in your power to make sure that you have that? If you can answer me confidently yes, and you still have a bad back, because there are people that can, then you're like, dude, I'm sorry you have to live with that.
Yeah.
Right? But it's like, for me, I don't know what it is, but it's just, that's my personality. It's like, when there's a problem, I just like focus and drill in on that thing until we can eliminate it. Right? I hate that. And so for my athletes, it's the same thing, right? They're like, well, I want to achieve this goal. And I'm like, I'm just going to drill in, and I think about it, and I work on it. And the important thing I really want to make sure everyone takes this away is, it's like, in cycling, you do the work. I don't pedal the bike for you. So I've always been really reluctant. Like, a lot of people have been like, oh, you coach people and your athletes did X result. And it was like, but it's not my result. It's their result. I was thankful to be a part of the journey, but I was just really a passenger in the car. You know what I mean? And like, I told them where to turn left, like, cause maybe they were going to miss the left turn. Right. But like, they're the ones that had to do the heavy lifting. And there's just like this immense pride that I take. And I know Joy too. Like, she's really she's my mentor. She's who I look up to. And she, when you see that for somebody and you help them make that change, and you see them own that, it's like they're at a new level. They've achieved something that, like, oh wait, I can do that. Right. And I see that all the time with my son now, right? Like, once he sees it, like, he can do it. I don't want your help. I'm like, son, let me help you brush your teeth. He's like, I can do it. I'm like, you're 2. You can't do it. You stick your toothbrush in your mouth and eat the toothpaste. That's not brushing your teeth. Like, stop it. Let me help you. He's like, I can do it. But anyway, that's just, 2-year-old stories.
But that's having your son, isn't that such a big motivating factor in your life now? It's just huge. Like, it changes everything.
That's been a really big challenge, because he didn't sleep a lot at the beginning. And I full disclosure, everybody, like, Joy really wanted a kid. I was like, I'm here to give you whatever you need. Let's make it happen. I didn't like dream and lay awake at night about teaching my kid how to play baseball or ride a bicycle or any of that stuff. And so it's taken me a long time to like recognize how important my role is in this process. And now that I'm seeing that more and actualizing it more, I'm just like, wow, this is just so much, and in a good way, but when you can, to see what you guys have built here and how you guys have done that as a family, and how now, like, you have another man and you have another 2 men in the family that can then pick up the slack and be helpful, and like think of what you can achieve now because you have a peer instead of just having someone that's subservient. Right. And I think that, to me, is just thinking about like our immense potential of, like, if we can help people elevate their game, right? Whether it be it our son, be it our daughters, be it our kids, be it our even our, sometimes our partners just need to be lifted up, but lifting everyone up so that they can just, like, everyone is pulling hard on the front. And that's kind of what I referred to earlier. It's like, you just,
and the generations progressing, because now what you grew up with,
they already know how to run. They know how to run at a young age, and you're like, you set them on this foundation, and they're already running, and it's like, okay, they're going to go and see what they can achieve and the legacy that they can create. You know what I mean? It's just like, you look back, and so again, I'm at the very, 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 very entry level stages of that. And so for me, it's like, okay.
It only gets better. Let me tell you.
I don't know. This is like scary, man.
It's scary.
I don't know if I'm doing a good job.
When you put your passion into your family like that you're doing, what you'll get in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, when you're not racing your bike anymore, so you're still riding. You go ride to your 80, whatever.
Sure.
Sure. But it's going to change.
You go fast.
Yeah, you're always going to go fast. It's going to change for you. But then when you've got that guy, like that, those, maybe you have more. Who knows? But it's going to be that'll be probably your biggest fulfillment. Yeah. So what do you see? What's next? You got camps coming up. You got We've got. We're working on a mammoth camp. I was probably going to release it here this weekend. I know you and I have been talking about it. You're super important to it, and we had. For Joy and I, we really want the camp thing to work well, because it's my wife specifically. Joy is amazing with like working one-on-one with people and in small groups. And there's something that's missing in the virtual element when we interact with people virtually, right? Like there's a lot of great things that we can do there, but in person you can just go up a level, right? So
with COVID, it's a little bit more challenging, and we'll see what happens. And obviously, we all got to be smart, and we want people to be healthy. That's our number one priority. But the reality is if it's possible, we'd like to do what we're really working on, and it's probably a little premature to say it, but I'm going to say it anyway. We're working on like a mammoth camp, but then having instead of just like last time we had a camp, and it was like, hey guys, see you at camp, and that was really cool. But there were things that we wanted to help people have a more successful experience at camp.
So prepping them. Maybe.
Right, prepping them. And so what we want to do is my wife is really excited about the Acoma Unity Center. It's something she's really been, with all the recent events and stuff that's going on, she really is excited to help that community, which is just down the street here from where we're recording, and helping that after school program and helping their young scholars and men be better, you know.
Tell a little bit more about that. What is that?
The Acoma Unity Center, Joy's been volunteering there for a couple of weeks, but basically it's an after school program, and they help inner city kids. They help them where learning is not maybe the first priority of the family. That's their after school program to be like, no, you're going to be better. They demand excellence from those kids. Good. And those kids are like, they're thriving because of it. Right. And so it's just amazing. It's amazing. And so we've been wanting to have a component like that in our business and a partnership component of that. So what we're toying with, and again, it's a little premature, but what we've brainstormed is having like 2 weekends of rides leading up to the big camp, and you know there'll be a fee element to the camp, but the fee to the previous weekends, which would be like 2 coach-led, fully supported training rides, and doing back-to-back work days, which, as you said, that's really the difficult thing for people to work towards and to get better at, would be making those donation-based for the Acoma Center. So it'd be our way as a community to give back and support that group of people and their mission. I mean, they're just amazing. For all of you listening, if you don't know anything about the Acoma Unity Center, I apologize for not being fluent in all of its benefits, but we did a podcast on Big Wheel Coaching podcast with the Kimberly Calvin on it, and she's amazing. But you can just look them up and just read their mission statement and tell me you don't get fired up. I mean, like, it's awesome.
Right on. Good. And these camps too, I just want to.
Oh yeah, we got to talk about those.
Well, just a little bit on the camps, so listeners know these are boys and girls, men and women, male and female, all ages. This is not. I think personally, in the scheme of life, it's not expensive. I mean, the way you guys do it, it's definitely not financially driven at all. You're just trying to get enough to keep it going and keep it consistent. But I don't want the listeners to think that this is thousands of dollars and I have to sell this. It's like it's not expensive. It's affordable. It's not difficult to pay for it.
Yeah.
So,
not trying to sound overly hyped about it, but I mean, it's really an experience you're not going to get anywhere else, because we spend a lot of time working on creating the right environment so that everyone can learn and grow without being lectured at. Because I can't stand it. I've had coaches that lecture me, I've had teachers that lecture me, and I just like, I just can't deal with it. Right. So we work really hard creating an environment so that learning is just a product of going through the motions, right? Like, you're just like, oh, like, this is what I do. Cool. And then you get so much better, and then you come out of it. And then now you can be, for us long-term, I'd like to see our athletes come. And it's not just, you don't have to be a Go coaching athlete to come. Anybody can come, and what we want is, cycling is different, again, than like soccer or baseball. There's no structured beginning. There's no like, oh, you played U19 soccer. Oh, you played U13. You did whatever, right? Like, when you say that, if you're in the soccer community or the baseball community or whatever, even Cub Scouts, if you just say, hey, I was a Weebelo, like, people know what that is, and you achieved a certain level. You know what I mean? In cycling, it's like, and what? You've ridden 100 miles? Well, okay, we kind of know what that means, but like, did you ride it and how fast? What happened? Did you do it by yourself? What's going on, And so the reality is, what we would like to help create is, we want to create a group of athletes that feel super confident in all these differing environments. Okay, because that's a real challenge with cycling, is that it's not like you can play basketball in Southern California, in Northern California, or in Georgia, and the hoops is the same height. right? The hoop is the same height. The key is the same. Everything's the same. Cycling is never the same. Even the same road from week to week has different weather conditions.
Right.
It's hotter, it's colder, it's windier. There's more people, so there's more draft or less draft. There's new potholes because the cars have been driving on it, right? There's always challenges, even on the same roads. So in my mind, I get so fired up. It's such a dynamic and fluid environment with so much stuff that there's so many inputs, and maybe it's because I have like ADHD or something like that, but there's so many inputs. You have to be able to filter them out, choose the ones that are really important and work towards those. Yeah. Okay. And so I want to help people be able to see, like, there's all these inputs, which are the ones that matter. Well, that's great. There's no hard rules. There's an exception to every rule. So I want to teach them generalization. So if you guys are into literature, there's a great book by Musashi, and he says, he who understands the way broadly sees it in all things. And that's the way I look at cycling, is that if I can help teach people, if I can help coach them to understand concepts and then how to be able to apply concepts. It doesn't matter if you're riding a road bike, a mountain bike, a gravel bike, a track bike, whatever. You're applying those concepts appropriately in the environment for which you're in and the body you're in at the time.
Yep.
That's really important because, hey, we get a little older. We're still fit, but maybe we're not as fit as when we were 20, right? Or maybe, hey, we're 20, or, for that matter, maybe you're 30 and you lost 40 pounds riding your bike. You're in a totally different chassis now.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Or maybe you have an injury that you did everything possible, but there's something that's going to linger with that injury forever, and you're just going to have to work with that.
Yes.
You're going to have to deal with it, and that's just.
Yes. We're going to have to compensate and find workarounds.
Your body,
right?
I'm sure you've had some injuries. Your body gets older. You're going to be dealing with some aches and pains as you get older. So, well, all of us.
I heard a great concept was we don't get old and stiff. We get stiff and then old. And it's been so powerful for me because, I want to make sure that I leave it with everybody. Like, the reason I use the word athlete, I don't call everyone cyclists. I call them our athletes. It's because there's so much more to cycling than just pedaling a bicycle, right? That stretching, that strengthening, that nutrition, that hydration, all of these things are really, really important. So it's like this make man whole concept, right? And so they do that a lot in medicine, where it's that make man whole concept. And so I love that idea where it's like we're trying to help people, on all levels, so that they can be the best athlete they can, right? And so that's how you can be the pitcher in the center of the table, right? The pitcher at the center of the table isn't just like, hey, I have all the water, I have all the money, or I have the job, or I have this and that. It's like, no, you're the full package. Yeah. You know what I mean? And if you're the full package, dude, you're the package. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Love it. And thank you for what you're doing and you enjoy. I mean, and that's why Snack Bar are 100% behind you.
We love you guys.
Because we're like-minded. You're a little intense. You're really intense, though, which is really good because your energy.
Well, now I understand why. Like, I get it now, and it's definitely, you couldn't have been any other way. Like,
that's a professional athlete.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
It's a different mentality, man.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Really, actually, really cool. It's really good talking to you today, and like just.
Thanks for your time. I know you guys are busy and you don't need to hear my ramblings of.
Well, we could go. I mean, we got to have you back again.
I was going to say episode 2 would be really awesome to do because it's just so much more I want to know already,
Oh,
there's a lot more we could unravel here. It's gonna be good.
We didn't talk about, there's a lot of stuff.
But you shared so much. You were real, which I know you would be.
Hey, man. You guys can have, whatever. Like, I get it. I'm a Fred. And, like, at some point, like, I'm just a Fred with my name on my bike now,
Well, you guys are awesome, though. We really appreciate what you do. So, Snack Bar is there. Always.
Oh, those are so good, man.
Thanks.
Those are good. I was going to talk to you guys about your last podcast, if I can make a statement, okay?
Absolutely.
You guys kill it with the podcast, and I love it. Okay,
thanks,
I love it. I just want to make sure that everyone at home, these guys are too modest, okay? I'm looking at you. Those snack bars. Mama Anka is not here right now, so we can say this. I know she can hear it, but man, those are so good. Those are like, it's like such a treat, like after a guy who, like my wife and I call it space food. Like after someone who's eaten so much space food over the years, and like, it's such a treat to be able to have what you guys, what you guys make and what you guys make by hand. And then to think about all maybe the effort that I put into like, trying to help someone physically to be their best. Anka has done all those things, and you guys have done all those things from a business standpoint and regulation-wise, and all these things to make just like what is to me. Yesterday I did a 100-mile gravel ride, which is really, really epic, and it was like I brought a Snack Bar Sport I brought multiple. And I got to be honest with you, I ate a lot of them that day. But that was my treat for myself at the top of the climb. Yeah. Okay, was like, oh my gosh, I get this lovely and the maca and all the because dude, I love chocolate. I got to stop eating it, but I love it. And so when I get to have one of your bars, I'm just like,
thank you,
a
Brian.
little bit of heaven right there. You know what I mean? A little bit of heaven. That's all I'm saying. Just a little bit of heaven. So for everyone at home, I know these guys are modest. They're not going to say it, but if you want a little bit of heaven, it comes in a snack bar package.
Thank you. Really appreciate that.
Oh, it's a family affair. I know you guys work hard on it.
Just like your business too.
Together,
we'll stay strong.
Together, I think that's the idea today. And together, we'll fill each other's cups, and that's really important. And always keep that balance, because at the end of the day, that's the key is the balance, and that's how you can fill the cups. So that's a beautiful way to, I think, right there. We got some show sponsors that we want to thank, and then some plugs for you, Big Wheel Coaching, of course, your podcast, Big Wheel Coaching. So where can people find you guys? Oh yeah, we're my wife is at Joy on Bike on any social media platform. We're Big Wheel Coaching on any social media platform. I don't do the Twitter, but I think Joy does the Twitter. But and then myself, I'm at BMC on Bike, and it's super easy to find us. I'm bigwheelcoaching@gmail.com. You guys can email me. I mean, it's probably not. I don't know the internet that good. Just Google Big Wheel Coaching. It'll come up. Big Wheel Coaching, man. Just Google it. And if you guys have questions, we're here. And please, it's no barrier to entry. We coach people. I have 2 people that are over 60. We have somebody who we coach is over 70. And not just here in Southern California, because you can coach them all over. So we coach people all over the world, because that's the beauty of the virtual component. But, again, anyone who listens to this, if you just have questions, you don't have to be a pure cyclist. We work primarily with cyclists, but we do a lot of stuff for people that just want to be fit, and they want to be able to be the best they can be with the limited time they have to invest. And we just help them make informed decisions to do that. Right. And then they got to do the work, but that's the best part is when you do the work, you get to own the benefit. Right. Yeah, exactly. You get to enjoy it. So Big Wheel Coaching. And then, we'll put links to everything in the description. So, that'll all be there. And then for us, AFN, American Financial Network. Yeah, we didn't talk too much about them, but they're a big sponsor. Sponsor. They're a good company, family-owned company. Their values. You said for a long time, right? Long time. So we'll get I want the owner of the company to come on the podcast. But his story is like our story. Really? Oh, yeah. I mean, good dude, huh? Yeah. And when the financial market collapsed in 06, 07, they were down to a few $100,000. It's all they had left to fund loans with. And that's not a lot. One loan could be a few $100,000. Yeah, I was going to say. The man took an equity line on his house to keep the company going. Come on. It's a family-owned company. So this was back in 06, 07 when they kept the company going. And he mortgaged his house to the tilt. And he put an equity line on his house. And right as he funded that equity line, they stopped all equity lines because the mortgage industry collapsed. And he was the last one. So he got this money. And he said to his wife, we're going to keep the doors open. And they were funding a few loans. And there was just family. So him and his son. So it's Jack Sherman and John Sherman, the son, Evie Sherman, the wife. And then some of the son's very close friends that they went to university with, they stayed. They funded that company. They kept it going. And they built it and kept going and going. I've been with them for over 8 years now. It's still the same family. And they just grew it and grew it and grew it. We can do loans in all 50 states. And over the last few months during COVID, they're funding $1 billion a month. This month right now. So today's our last day. Tomorrow's our last day of funding. But we're already they were at $995,567,000 this morning. So they're going to fund over $1 billion. Same family-owned company, same owners, it's all there. It's a lot of zeros, bro. A lot of zeros. And they had to go remotely when they did it. When they funded their first $1 billion, that was during COVID, they went remote. Wow, that's a big deal. Their story's good. Their values are strong. It's called Team AFN, American Financial Network. They are a true team. And they're CrossFitters, they're studs, golfers, all of them, boys, girls, everybody, men, women, it's a big team. It's a really good company. So we didn't talk too much about them. I want to hear that one. Their values are good. So I'd love to get those guys on. They're really solid. Thank you to them. And then, of course, Snack Bar, always sponsored by Snack Bar. Yeah. So that's, ladies and gentlemen, this has been another episode of Terrestrial Tales, life stories that paint a bigger picture. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, guys.